The sun was bleeding out across the horizon, painting the Arizona sky in shades of bruised purple and angry orange. I should have turned back. Every rational part of my brain screamed it, but the trail cam, the one I'd placed deep in the canyon just a week ago, held the promise of something incredible. Or so I thought. My name is Leo, and I'm a wildlife photographer. Or at least, I was. Now, I'm just a survivor. This part of the reservation is technically off-limits, but the stories of an unusually large, almost mythical coyote pack had been too tempting to ignore. I'd set up my best camera on a game trail that looked like a 4-lane highway for local fauna. My plan was simple: get in, swap the memory card, and get out before the last light vanished completely. Dusk, however, has a way of playing tricks on you out here. The shadows stretch and twist, turning familiar rock formations into monstrous figures. The wind whispers through the sagebrush, sounding unnervingly like a human voice. I found the tree easily enough, a gnarled old juniper clinging to the canyon wall. But as I approached, a smell hit me. It was coppery and foul, the scent of a fresh kill, but it was mixed with something else. Something acrid and unnatural, like burnt hair and rot. My hand froze just inches from the camera. That's when I saw it. Tucked into a crevice in the rocks just below my camera was a small, crudely made doll. It was fashioned from twigs and sinew, with a scrap of my own flannel shirt. The one ID torn on a branch last week tied around its middle. A single, long, black hair was woven through its head. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a prank. This was a warning. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Forget the camera. Forget the photos. I needed to leave. Now. I spun around, my boot slipping on the loose scree. That's when I heard the first sound. A click. Not from the rocks, but from somewhere in the brush, to my left. It sounded like a dry twig snapping, but it was followed by another, and then another. A rhythmic clicking that mimicked the sound of a Geiger counter. Click. Click. I fumbled for the heavy-duty flashlight on my belt, its beam cutting a nervous swath through the deepening gloom. The clicking stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse, thick and suffocating. My light scanned the area, catching nothing but trembling leaves and ancient rock. I took a hesitant step back towards the path, then another. The sound came again, but this time it was different. It was a voice, my voice. Leaving so soon. It whispered from the darkness, a perfect, chilling mimicry of my own tone. I froze, every muscle in my body screaming. It couldn't be. I was alone. Did you like my gift? My own voice continued, laced with a sickening, playful malice. My flashlight beam shook violently as I swept it back and forth, desperate to find the source, and then the light landed on it. For a split second, my brain refused to process what it was seeing. It was a coyote, but it was wrong. Horribly wrong. It was standing on its hind legs, its form stretched and elongated, impossibly tall. Its forelimbs were too long, ending in what looked disturbingly like human hands with dirty, claw-like nails. But the eyes. The eyes were the worst part. They weren't the intelligent gold of a wild animal. They were sunken and filled with a hateful, ancient intelligence. And they were staring right at me. As my light hit it, the thing contorted. Its bones cracked and popped with a sickening wet sound, its body folding and unfolding like grotesque origami. It dropped onto all fours, but it didn't move like a coyote. It scurried, its limbs moving in an unnatural, disjointed way, like a spider. It darted behind a large boulder, and the clicking sound started again. Faster this time, more frantic. I didn't scream. The sound was trapped in my throat, a solid lump of pure terror. I just ran. I scrambled up the loose rock of the canyon trail, not daring to look back. I could hear it behind me, not the sound of paws on dirt, but a skittering, scraping noise, punctuated by that horrible clicking, and the voice. It kept calling to me, sometimes in my own voice, sometimes in the pleading cry of a woman, then in the terrified whimper of a child. "Help me," it cried. "It's so dark. Don't leave me here." It knew what it was doing. It was trying to make me hesitate, to make me turn around. Every instinct of human decency fought against my primal need to survive. My lungs burned. My legs felt like lead, but I didn't stop. I could hear it gaining on me. The scraping was louder, the clicking right at my heels. I risked a glance over my shoulder. The creature was loping along, its form shifting and blurring in the twilight. Sometimes a coyote, sometimes a man, sometimes something in between. Its head was craned at an impossible angle, and its jaw was unhinged in a silent, gaping scream. I burst out of the canyon mouth and onto the flat desert plain where I parked my truck. It felt like miles away, a tiny metal sanctuary under the vast, stardusted sky. I fumbled for my keys, my fingers clumsy and slick with sweat. The click of the unlock button was the loudest sound in the world. I threw myself inside, slammed the door, and locked Italiano. My hands shook so badly it took 3 tries to get the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. I slammed the truck into drive and stomped on the gas, fishtailing in the dirt before the tires found purchase. In my rearview mirror, illuminated by the red glow of my taillights, it stood at the edge of the trail. It was on 2 legs again, a tall, skeletal silhouette against the night. It slowly raised one of its long, thin arms and waved. Not a friendly wave, but a slow, deliberate gesture. A promise. Then, it opened its mouth, and a sound came out that wasn't a mimicry, but its own true voice. It was a high-pitched, chattering shriek that vibrated through the truck-est frame and seemed to tear at the very fabric of my sanity. I drove all night, not stopping until the sun was high in the sky and I was hundreds of miles away. I never went back for the camera. I don't want to know what images are on that memory card. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls just right, I think I can hear it. That clicking sound. And sometimes, in the darkest moments before sleep, I hear my own voice whispering from the shadows, asking if I liked its gift. I left a part of my soul in that canyon, and I know, with a certainty that chills me to my core, that one day it will come to collect the rest. Thank you so much for listening to my story tonight. If you felt that chill run down your spine, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there, and always trust your gut. Good night. The hum of the 18-wheeler is a trucker's lullaby, but that night, on the desolate stretch of I-80 just past Cheyenne, it felt more like a funeral. The night was a starless, ink-black void, the kind that swallows your headlights whole. My CB radio, usually a constant chatter of fellow road warriors, was dead silent. That was the first thing that felt wrong. Then came the second. A figure on the side of the road, thumb out, silhouetted against the dark Wyoming plains. Company policy is strict. No riders, no exceptions. But something about this person. They were just standing there, eerily still, not even flinching as my rig thundered closer. My foot eased off the accelerator. Against my better judgment, Primetta pulled a bear. The hiss of the air brakes sounded like a sigh of surrender. As I rolled down the window, the cold night air rushed in, carrying the scent of sagebrush and something else. Something metallic and vaguely unsettling, like old pennies. The figure was a man, gaunt and tall, wrapped in a threadbare blanket that did little to fend off the wind. His face was lost in shadow. "Need a lift?" I asked, my voice sounding unnaturally loud in the silence. He just nodded a slow, deliberate movement. "Where to?" Primera Prest. He didn't answer, just pointed a long, bony finger down the highway. I should have floored it right then. I should have left him in my dust, but a strange sense of obligation, or maybe just morbid curiosity, made me pop the passenger door. He climbed in, enfolding his lanky frame into the cab. The smell got stronger, coppery, and raw. He pulled the blanket tighter around himself, keeping his face hidden. We drove in silence for what felt like an eternity. The only sound was the rumble of the diesel engine and the rhythmic thump of the tires on the asphalt. I kept glancing over, trying to get a look at him, but he never moved, never spoke. The silence was getting to me, stretching my nerves thin. "Name's Jake," I finally said, just to break the tension. "You got a name?" He was silent for a long moment. Then he shifted. The blanket slipped, and for a second, I saw his eyes in the dim glow of the dashboard. They weren't right. They were too wide, too dark, and they seemed to reflect the light in a way human eyes don't. He didn't answer my question. Instead, he spoke in a voice that was a dry, rasping whisper. "Mile 337, he said. CB checked. My blood ran cold. Mile 337. It was an old trucker's ghost story. A place where the radio waves went haywire and drivers reported seeing things that weren't there. A phantom stop. I'd always dismissed it as campfire talk, a story to spook the rookies. That's just a legend," I stammered, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. He let out a low chuckle, a sound like dry leaves skittering across pavement. "Is it Jacob?" He used my full name, Jacob. Nobody called me that. Nobody except my father. My heart hammered against my ribs. How did you know my name?" I demanded, my voice trembling. He turned his head slowly, and the blanket fell away from his face. It was a nightmare. His features were wrong, stretched and distorted, as if they were a poorly made mask. But the worst part was his mouth. It twisted into a grotesque smile, and when he spoke again, the voice that came out was not his own. It was my father's voice. "You're driving too fast. Son, you'll wear out the tires." Every word was a perfect imitation, right down to the gruff, loving cadence I hadn't heard in 10 years. Not since the funeral. I slammed on the brakes, the truck jackknifing with a deafening screech of tortured metal and burning rubber. We skidded to a halt, fishtailing wildly across the empty highway. I was hyperventilating, my mind screaming. "Who are you?" I yelled, unbuckling my seatbelt, ready to fight or flee. The thing in the passenger seat just smiled wider, its unnatural eyes fixed on me. It didn't look human anymore. Its limbs seemed to elongate, its form shifting under the blanket. "Don't you recognize your own PA?" it rasped, again in my father's voice. "I've been waiting for you, Jacob. Out here, it gets lonely." My hand fumbled for the door handle. I had to get out. I had to get away from this mockery of my father. It lunged. It moved with a speed that was impossible, a blur of motion in the confined space of the cab. I felt a searing pain in my arm as long, talon-like fingers dug into my flesh. I screamed, a raw, primal sound of pure terror, and threw myself against the driver's side door. It burst open and I tumbled out onto the cold asphalt, scrambling away on my hands and knees, gravel tearing at my palms. I got to my feet and ran. I didn't look back, I just ran, fueled by an adrenaline-fueled panic I'd never known. The only thing I could hear over my own ragged breaths and the pounding of my heart was a sound that will haunt my dreams for the rest of my life. It was a cacophony of voices, a chorus of stolen sounds of my father's, my mother's, friends from my past, snippets of CB chatter all erupting from the cab of my truck, twisting into a horrifying, mocking laughter that echoed across the empty plains. I don't know how long I ran. Eventually, the sounds faded, replaced once again by the lonely Wyoming wind. I found my way to a truck stop miles down the road, babbling incoherently to a state trooper who probably thought I was on drugs. They found my rig, abandoned and blocking both lanes. The engine cold. The passenger door was wide open, swinging in the breeze. There was no sign of anyone, but on the passenger seat, they found my father's old Zippo lighter, the one we buried with him. I don't drive at night anymore. I sold my rig and took a local dispatch job. Sometimes, when the static on the radio crackles just right, I think I can hear it. A dry, whispering voice, calling my name from the darkness, asking for a ride. They say skinwalkers can steal your voice, your face, but I know they can steal something much worse. They can steal your memories, twist them, and wear the voices of your dead like a coat. So if you're ever driving through Wyoming late at night and your radio goes quiet, just keep driving. Don't stop. Don't stop for anything, especially not at mile 337. Thanks for tuning in to another story. If this one sent a chill down your spine, hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Stay safe out there on the dark roads. I work contract maintenance for a sign company out of Kingman, Arizona. We handled the billboard jobs that others turned down. The ones out on forgotten highways or closed routes where the wind never stops blowing. It pays well, if you do not mind the isolation. I have spent more nights in the desert than I have in my own bed. On my Firth 2021. My assignment was to replace a lighting rig on a fallen sign north of Wikiup, along a bypass that had been shut down for over a year. The site was officially condemned after a storm knocked the structure sideways, but the company wanted it repaired for inspection. Locals told me the area was bad luck, that something watched from the wash after sunset. I told them I had work to do. The drive out took 2 hours. The last stretch of road had cracked into dry gravel and white dust. The billboard came into view just after noon, a metal skeleton jutting from the desert floor, half buried and sun-bleached. The air shimmered like heat coming off a forge. The smell of creosote and rust hung thick enough to taste. I parked the truck, logged my arrival, and stepped into the open silence. The wind was faint but constant, whistling through the hollow frame, turning each metal beam into a different note. I checked my equipment, clipped the harness, and started climbing. Up close, the damage was stranger than expected. The main support beam was bent, but not broken. The bolts sheared smooth instead of twisted. The cables had been cut clean, almost polished at the ends. I took photos for the report. The surface of the steel was warm enough to sting through my gloves. My safety line tugged once against the harness, gentle at first, like it had caught a breeze. I adjusted the tension and kept moving. There was no breeze, not even a breath of air. The work itself was a routine. Replace the rigging hooks, secure the bolts, mount the floodlight casing. Each sound stood out like it was happening inside a vacuum. Metal striking metal, the squeak of the pulley, the creak of the harness strap. I talked to myself under my breath the way most people do when they work alone. It helped fill the space. I said, "Lines tight." And checked the tension again. Then something shifted. The steel under my boots gave a low groan, deep and hollow, as if something inside it was moving. At first, I thought it was heat distortion. The reflection of the metal seemed to ripple with a shape that wasn't mine. I looked down at the truck, and the ladder on the side shook as if someone had brushed past it. I called out, "Company crew, is that you?" Nothing. The wind died completely. The radio on my belt clicked once and came alive. A voice spoke through it, my own voice. "Lines tight," it said, the exact same words I had just spoken. The mic light stayed dark. I froze where I stood. The voice repeated it again, quieter, almost uncertain. "Lines tight." Then again, whispering now, stretched and hollow. "Lines tight." I switched the radio off and waited. The silence that followed was absolute. No wind, no insects, no hum of power from the light casing. The kind of silence that feels like pressure in your ears. I started to unclip my belt to climb down, and that was when the safety line moved again. It began to tighten slowly, with smooth, steady tension, as if someone on the ground was pulling the rope hand over hand. The carabiner strained against my harness. I braced my boots against the beam and shouted, "Stop pulling that line." It kept tightening. The metal frame vibrated under me. The whole structure began to hum, faint but rhythmic, like it had a heartbeat. My flashlight shook in my hand. Premier looked down, expecting to see someone at the base of the billboard, but there was no one. The line stretched straight to the ground, drawn so tight that the fibers creaked. The smell of hot copper filled the air. I tried to release the clip, but the latch jammed. The rope groaned under tension. Then I saw movement above me, where the sign's crossbeam met the sky. A shape crouched along the top, long arms bent around the metal, head tilted like it was studying me. I could not see its face. The light hit its outline, and then it was gone. My body jerked backward as if pulled by the harness. My boots left the beam for a second before the line snapped loose, and I slammed into the side of the frame. The wind came back all at once, roaring across the desert and shaking the sign so hard I thought it would tear free. I hung there, gripping the metal until the world stopped swaying. When I looked up again, the top beam was empty. I climbed down without running, but faster than I ever had before. The moment my boots hit the sand, I felt the line drop beside me. It landed in a perfect coil, like someone had laid it down gently. I sat in the cab of the truck until my hands stopped shaking. Then the radio clicked on again, though I had left it switched off. The same voice, my voice, whispered through the static. "Lines tight." The words looped once, twice, then stopped as if the desert swallowed them. By the time I returned to the yard, the storm had followed me north. My supervisor met me at the gate, surprised I was back early. I told him the job was finished, that the frame was secure. He frowned and said that site had been decommissioned. He said we had not received a repair order for any billboard north of Wikiup in over a year. I looked at the work slip again. The job number was printed, but the signature line was blank. I folded it into my pocket and told him I must have misread it. A week later, I drove that stretch again at night. The desert was empty, the sky full of stars, the air perfectly still. But as I came around the curve at mile marker 187, I saw the billboard in the distance. The floodlight I installed was glowing, steady and bright. For a second, I thought it was just my eyes playing tricks. Then, I saw the safety line hanging from the top beam. It was swaying side to side, pulled tight for a moment, then slack, as if an unseen hand was still testing the weight. I do night contracts for facilities management, the kind of jobs no one else wants. Biohazard clearances, shuttered schools, old medical buildings waiting for demolition. On November 12th, I took a solo cleanup assignment at the old St. Agnes Hospital outside Fayetteville, West Virginia. It closed after a flood ruined the lower wing. The county wanted the top floors cleaned for asbestos survey. The supervisor who gave me the keys said not to stay past 3 a.m. because the alarms act up. I told him I was paid hourly and not superstitious. Then I drove up to the gravel road and unlocked the side door to start my shift. The place smelled like bleach and wet plaster. My flashlight hit pale tiles, wheel ruts from stretchers, and water stains creeping down the walls. The generator hummed, steady in the basement, powering only emergency lighting and the main corridor outlets. My checklist was simple: remove ceiling tiles, tag broken panels, and bag insulation. Every 30 minutes, I marked readings from the air quality meter. I kept a small BLUETOOTH speaker playing classic rock, just for company. The sound carried down the empty hallways and came back to me softer, like someone else was humming along. The PA system ran through old intercom boxers in the walls, each one dark and silent. The tags on them dated back to the 70s. I passed 4 on my first walkthrough, all dead. By the time I reached the recovery ward, the building's echo felt wrong. The air carried sound too far, like the hall was hollow under the floor. I told myself it was just the ductwork, carrying the hum of the generator. When I swept the flashlight across a metal door marked obsolete supply, the beam wavered for a moment, as if crossing heat. My speaker popped once, the music cutting to static for half a second, then returned to normal. Around 1 a.m. I set up the negative air machine near the nurse's station. Its rumble filled the hallway, steady and low. I climbed a stepladder to pry off a section of stained ceiling tile, the air thick with dust. Then, faint through the static hum, the PA speaker above the nurse's desk clicked. A short burst of feedback echoed down the corridor. I froze, tile in hand, waiting for it to die. Instead, a voice came through. My name. Spoken in my own tone, flattened, calm. Chris. Room ready. The sentence repeated twice, each word distinct, filtered through static. Then, silence. I climbed down, checked the speaker, and found the wiring pulled loose from the conduit. The whole panel should have been dead. I radioed the contractor line. Got no signal, then switched to the local FM channel just to test. Static there too. The air monitor beeped, registering a sudden carbon spike that cleared 2 seconds later. I logged the time, 1:23. I told myself it was a backfeed from the generator. Maybe the paging circuit reconnected through a surge. I reset the breaker for that hallway and returned to work. At 2, the generator dimmed briefly, lights fading yellow, then coming back strong. The air felt heavier, carrying a smell like warm copper. Every surface looked damp, though nothing dripped. The static came again, louder, from 3 speakers at once. "Chris," it said. "Room ready." Each repetition came from a different end of the corridor, as if the building were breathing through the walls. I turned the music up, louder than I needed to, and kept working to the beat. When I reached the operating theater, the intercom there clicked again. Chris, a pause. "Room ready." This time, the voice had a rhythm that matched my breathing. I pressed the talk button, though I knew it wasn't connected. The speaker answered in perfect timing, repeating my words half a second after I said them. I ran a line check with the multimeter. No current, no continuity, nothing alive in the wire. The air pressure dropped enough to make my ears pop. The sound of the generator vanished under a deeper vibration that seemed to come from the floor. The door to the recovery ward creaked open by itself and stopped halfway. Inside, the old bed stood under dusty sheets, metal rails glinting in the flashlight beam. My speaker shut off mid. I stepped toward the room, 1 foot at a time. The intercom whispered again, softer now. "Room ready." My own voice again, almost kind. "Come see." I stood in the doorway and aimed the light at the far bed. The sheet rose an inch, as if lifted from beneath. Dust sifted into the beam, catching the light in slow spirals. "Primera ba, sked Hawaii," keeping my eyes on the door. The air monitor beeped again, not with a reading this time, but with a continuous tone. Its display showed letters instead of numbers. 3 words scrolled slowly across it. "Room is ready." The cord unplugged from the wall, and the screen stayed lit. I made for the exit. My boots echoed in time with something heavier behind me, like a second set of steps, a few feet late. The overhead lights flickered. The speaker above the door burst alive again, my voice now distorted but rising in volume, calling my name again and again. Each repetition came from a different hall, overlapping, louder and faster until they blurred into one continuous chant. I yanked the door open and stepped outside into the cold. The moment my feet hit the gravel, the sound stopped. Outside, the night was silent, except for the hum of the generator bellow. The stars hung low over the ridge, and the frost on the windshield glittered under my flashlight. I climbed into the cab and checked the time. 2:47. The dashboard clock froze for a second, then jumped to 3:01. I started the engine and drove down the hill without looking in the mirrors. When I reached the main road, the radio turned itself on. My own voice came through, calm and clear. "Room ready," then static. Morning crew came up to relieve me. I didn't tell them what I heard. I just handed over the keyring and said the generator was acting up. The supervisor laughed and said those old hospitals sometimes leak electricity through the PA lines. When he turned away, I noticed a thin red smear on the inside of my right glove, right where my palm pressed the ladder rail. It smelled like rust, but wiped off clean. That night, when I got home, I plugged my phone into the charger and fell asleep watching the news. Around 2 a.m., the screen flickered, lighting the room. The voice from the speaker whispered through the phone, softer now. "Chris, room ready." I checked the display. No app was open. The phone wasn't even unlocked. The words repeated, slow and patient, until I turned the device face. For the last week, my alarm clock has been skipping ahead by a few minutes every night, always stopping at exactly 3:01 when it rings. The sound comes not from the clock, but from the small speaker I used at St. Agnes. I threw that speaker away. Still, I wake to the same sentence, in my own voice, coming faintly through the dark. "Room ready." 10 lenses, as if something on the other end is waiting for me to answer. I work nights for the Municipal Water District in Eastern Washington. My title is Field Engineer, though most of what I do is babysit old equipment and make sure nothing explodes while everyone else is asleep. On April 15th, 2023, I was sent to the North Reservoir outside Pasco for an overnight watch during a planned pump shutdown. The basin was isolated, sitting half a mile from the main plant, surrounded by chain link and sagebrush. The old operator who handed me the keys said the place sometimes breathes when the pumps are off. I told him stagnant water does not breathe. Then I took the clipboard and drove out alone. The access road ended at a square compound of concrete and rust. Sodium lamps glared from poles along the perimeter, washing everything in a pale orange haze. The air smelled like dust, metal, and the faint sting of chlorine. Inside the control shed, the hum of the transformer filled the silence like a heartbeat. A SCADA screen showed both pumps offline. Inflow 0, outflow 0. Level steady at 31 feet. Nothing should move. I logged the readings and settled in with coffee that tasted like burned copper. The clock ticked loud against the stillness. I made my first round at 1 in the morning. The metal grate walkway ran over the surface of the reservoir, connecting the pump house to the perimeter rail. The water beneath was black glass. No ripples, no breeze, no sign of life. I shined my flashlight across it and saw only my reflection in the thin beam cutting through darkness. Everything looked textbook normal. I wrote that in the log when I came back inside. At 2, I went out again. The night had grown colder, the air heavy enough that each breath fogged before me. The surface looked different this time, like a thin shimmer moved across it. I leaned on the rail. From the exact center of the basin, a ripple spread outward in a perfect circle. It broke against the wall and vanished. I waited. 10 seconds later, another ripple began. The pumps were dead. The discharge pipes were dry. I checked the panel anyway. Every light glowed green for shutdown. I went procedural, talking through each step to stay calm. Power off. Valves sealed. No inflow. No turbulence from the return line. Everything confirmed. Still, the water rippled again, slow and deliberate. I dropped a small pebble into the basin to test for reaction. The waves overlapped once, then separated. My stone's disturbance fading while the perfect circles continued undisturbed, born from the same spot at the center. I called operation. The radio hissed. Then a faint voice said, "Wind." I told them the air was still enough to freeze breath in place. They did not reply. I began pacing along the walkway, counting seconds between the waves. Each new circle came exactly when my right foot hit metal. When I stopped, they stopped. I tried again. One step forward, one circle blooming from the center. It was exact. The pattern grew tighter as I moved, the water's pulse syncing with the rhythm of my boots. I backed away and leaned over the rail. The circles were smaller now, faster, trembling as if waiting. The smell of chlorine deepened until my tongue went numb. Inside the control shed, the lights flickered. The transformer hum dipped into silence. The intercom crackled once, then spoke in my voice. North Basin calm. No disturbances. I froze. The wall speaker clicked off. My hand was nowhere near the mic. I tried the phone. Dead line. Static rolled through the radio, a slow pulse of sound matching the ripples outside. When I looked through the window, I saw them moving again. Wider now, faster, chasing each other to the edge of the basin. I stepped outside. The air felt thick and cold. The walkway vibrated beneath my boots, too slight to call an earthquake, but too steady to ignore. From the center of the basin came another ripple, only this one did not fade when it reached the wall. It climbed upward, a thin sheet of water rising vertically before sliding down again. The light from the nearest lamp warped across it like a living film. The next ripple came quicker, catching the last before it died. The pattern tightened until the whole surface looked like a drum being struck from below. I heard the intercom again, closer this time. "Come," it said. No disturbances. My own voice, but slower, lower. The sound bounced off the concrete, like something breathing through the walls. I leaned over the rail. My reflection looked back, motionless while I moved. Then it blinked after I already had. I whispered my own name, and the reflection's lips followed half a second late. The next ripple started not at the center, but directly beneath where my reflection stood. I stumbled back into the shed. The floor trembled lightly, as if pumps were running again, even though every indicator stayed dark. I hit the emergency reset. Nothing changed. My radio came alive with a faint heartbeat of static. It matched the the rhythm of the waves outside. Then a droplet struck the window from the inside, leaving a clear line of moisture that ran upward before fading. The hum of the transformer returned, louder than before, filling the room until it pressed on my ear. I ran the final check. Pumps off, valves sealed, pressure settle level unchanged. Still, the noise pulsed in my teeth. The overhead lamps flickered, turning the water outside silver for one long second. Then everything stopped. The ripples froze mid-ring. The air went still, and the hum cut out. I waited without breathing. Slowly, the circles began to fade, each one smaller than the last, until the surface turned to glass again. When dawn came, the sky was clean and blue. The morning crew arrived with thermoses and jokes about easy night shifts. The basin looked normal except for one faint ring of moisture along the concrete rim, exactly 1 inch high, running the entire circumference. They said it was condensation from the temperature shift. I nodded and wrote it down. That night, at home, I woke at 2:15. My bedside glass of water was trembling. Perfect circles spread from its center, steady and silent, as if the basin had followed me. I stood perfectly still. The rings stopped. I took one step toward it, and the next ring began. The hum of the generator was the only thing breaking the dead silence of the West Texas night. I was a greenhorn geologist, barely a year out of college, sent to a remote drilling site to collect some core samples. It was my first overnight stay on a rig, and the isolation was already getting to me. The towering Derrick, lit up like a skeletal Christmas tree, felt less like a beacon of industry and more like a lonely monument in a vast, dark ocean of mesquite and dust. The day crew had left hours ago, leaving me with the night shift a handful of seasoned roughnecks and their foreman. The foreman, a guy named Jed, was strange. It was a tall, sinewy man with eyes that seemed to hold the darkness of the surrounding landscape. He moved with an unsettling quietness for a man his size, appearing and disappearing from the shadows of the rig like a phantom. He never seemed to eat or drink, just watch. He'd stand at the edge of the floodlight's reach, his silhouette unnaturally still, just staring out into the blackness. The other guys on the crew seemed to give him a wide berth. They'd mutter amongst themselves, casting nervous glances his way, but clammed up whenever I came near. Around those AMI was logging samples in the doghouse, the small trailer that served as an on-site office. A piercing shriek tore through the night, echoing from somewhere out in the brush. It didn't sound like any animal I'd ever heard. It was a sound of pure agony, something almost human. The hair on my arm stood straight up. I looked out the window and saw the crew frozen in place, their faces pale under the harsh rig lights. Jed, however, was gone from his usual spot. A few minutes later, one of the roughnecks, a younger guy named Kobe, stumbled into the doghouse, his eyes wide with terror. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "It's the third time this week." Jed just walked off into the dark after it, didn't even grab a flashlight. Before I could respond, the radio crackled to life. It was the companyman from the main office, about 100 miles away. His voice was casual. "Hey, just checking in. How's it going out there? By the way, the new night foreman, Dale, said his truck broke down. He won't make it out till morning. You guys manage all right on your own for one night? A cold dread, colder than the desert night. Wasid, Oberme." I looked at Kobe, his face a mask of confusion and fear. I slowly turned my head to look out the window, back towards the derrick. Standing just at the edge of the light, where the darkness began, was the tall, gaunt figure of the man we knew as Jed. Was back, and he was smiling, a wide, unnatural grin that stretched too far across his face. In the dim light, I could see his teeth were long and sharp, like a canine's. He slowly raised a hand and beckoned to me, a silent, chilling invitation into the night. But that wasn't the worst part. From the dark behind him, a sound drifted on the wind, a faint, guttural mimicry of the company man's voice on the radio, repeating, "You guys manage all right, on your own." We locked ourselves in the doghouse. For the rest of the night, we listened. We listened to the scratching at the metal door, the soft footsteps circling the trailer. We listened to the whispers, Voices of our own friends and family calling our names, begging us to come outside. They were perfect imitations, but they were all layered over that same low, guttural growl. One of the roughnecks started sobbing, saying it was his daughter's voice. We had to hold him back from opening the door. The thing outside, the thing pretending to be Jed, seemed to enjoy our terror. It would tap on the windows, its long, spindly fingers scraping against the glass. Sometimes, we'd catch a glimpse of its face pressed against the Panit's eyes glowing with a faint, predatory light, its form shifting and contorting in the shadows. The most terrifying moments were the silences, the long stretches where the scratching and whispering would stop, and all we could hear was the hum of the generator and our own frantic heartbeats. That's when we knew it was just watching, waiting, savoring our fear. We heard the sound of Kobe's truck starting up outside. His keys were on the table right next to us. The thing was learning. It was toying with us, showing us how exactly it could manipulate our world. It revved the engine, then drove the truck straight into one of the rig's support legs with a deafening crash. The metal shrieked, and the entire rig groaned. It was trying to bring the whole structure down on top of us. Panic erupted in the tiny trailer. We were trapped, with a monster outside, trying to bury us alive. Just as the first hint of gray light began to touch the horizon, everything stopped. The whispers, the scratching, the taunting sounds. It all just vanished. There was only the wind and the groaning of the damaged rig. We stayed huddled in the doghouse, too terrified to move, until the sun was fully in the sky. When the day crew arrived, they found us pale and shaking. Koba's truck was mangled against the derrick. There were deep, inhuman tracks all around the trailer, but they simply vanished at the edge of the brush. There was no sign of the man we called Jed. He was never on the payroll. He was never even real. I quit that job the next day. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls just right, I can still hear those whispers. I can still see that too-wide grin in the dark, and I know that somewhere out there, in the lonely places of the world, it's still hunting. Thanks for tuning in to our story. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more terrifying encounters. Stay safe out there, and be careful who you work the night shift with. You never know who or what might be watching from the darkness. The desert air hangs heavy and still, thick with the scent of dust in the coming night. Most people, when they think of July 4th, they picture barbecues, parades, maybe a cool lake. But for me, it was always about the fireworks. My family ran a roadside fireworks stand just off a lonely stretch of highway in northern Arizona. For 2 weeks, every summer, that little wooden shack was my whole world. Business was slow that year, the blistering heat keeping most folks indoors. The sun had finally dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery streaks of orange and purple, when the old pickup truck appeared. It rumbled to a stop in a cloud of dust, its headlights cutting through the twilight. The engine coughed and sputtered into silence. A man got out, tall and gaunt, his frame swallowed by a dusty, oversized coat despite the sweltering heat. He moved with a strange, jerky gait, like his limbs weren't quite coordinated. He didn't say a word, just ambled over to the stand, his eyes hidden under the shadow of a wide-brimmed hat. I gave him my usual friendly greeting, "Evening. Anything I can help you find?" Ehust started, his head tilted at an unnatural angle. A chill, completely at odds with the warm night, crawled up my spine. His gaze swept over the colorful boxes of black cats, Roman candles, and bottle rockets. His silence was unnerving, heavy. Finally, he pointed a long, bony finger at the most expensive package we had, the grand finale. His voice, when it came, was a dry, raspy whisper like leaves skittering across pavement. "That one?" he said. It sounded like he hadn't used his voice in years. I hesitated for a second, then nodded, trying to maintain my customer service smile. "Excellent choice," I managed, my own voice sounding too loud in the sudden quiet. As I reached for the box, his hand shot out and gripped my wrist. His skin was cold, leathery, and shockingly strong. I flinched, trying to pull back, but his grip was like iron. He leaned closer, and for the first time, I saw his eyes beneath the hat's brim. They weren't human. Day-weary, dark, predatory, like a coyote's, reflecting the faint light from the stand with an unsettling gleam. "You alone out here, boy?" he rasped, his breath smelling of decay and something else, something wild. My heart hammered against my ribs. I lied, trying to keep my voice steady. "My dad's in the back, restocking." His lips peeled back into something that wasn't a smile. It was a snarl, revealing teeth that were too long, too sharp. He let out a low chuckle, a rattling sound from deep in his chest. "No, he's not," he whispered, his grip tightening. Panic seized me. I knew then, with a certainty that froze my blood, that this wasn't a man. The stories the old-timers told, the Navajo legends I dismissed as superstition, they all came flooding back. The shapeshifters, the skin, his grip on my wrist felt like it was crushing my bones. I had to do something. My eyes darted around frantically, landing on a heavy-duty box cutter I used for opening shipments. It was just within reach. With my free hand, I lunged for it, my fingers closing around the cool plastic. I swung it wildly, the blade catching his coat and tearing through the fabric. He let out a yelp, a sound that wasn't human at all. It was the shriek of a wounded animal, high-pitched and guttural. He released my wrist, stumbling back, clutching his arm. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I scrambled out of the back of the stand and just ran. I didn't dare look back. I just ran into the dark desert. The crunch of my boots on the gravel, the only sound besides my own ragged breathing and the pounding of my heart. Behind me, I heard a sickening crack, the sound of bones snapping and rearranging. The man's pained grunts morphed into the snarling and growling of a large canine. I risked a glance over my shoulder. In the dim glow of the stand's lights, I saw it. The man was gone. In his place stood a massive, grotesque creature, part coyote, part man, with long, twisted limbs and those same glowing, predatory eyes. It was on all fours, but it moved with an unholy speed, closing the distance between us with terrifying ease. The desert, my childhood playground, had become a labyrinth of terror. I dodged between sagebrush and cacti, the creature's hot, foul breath on my heels. Its claws tore at the dirt, sending rocks flying. I could hear its guttural snarls, a sound of pure malice that promised a gruesome end. I saw the lights of a passing car on the highway up ahead, a beacon of hope in the suffocating darkness. I pushed myself harder, my lungs screaming for air. I burst from the desert scrub and onto the hot asphalt, waving my arms like a madman. The car, a beat-up sedan, screeched to a halt, just inches from me. The driver, a woman with wide, terrified eyes, screamed at me to get in. I didn't need to be told twice. I threw myself into the passenger seat, slamming and locking the door just as the creature emerged from the darkness. It stood at the edge of the road, bathed in the car's headlights, its form a nightmarish silhouette. It let out a frustrated howl that shook the very air, a sound of pure, ancient evil. The woman stomped on the gas, and we peeled away, leaving the monster and my family's fireworks stand behind in a cloud of dust and terror. We never went back. We left the stand, the inventory, everything, right where it was. My family packed up and moved to a different state within the week, far from the Arizona desert and its dark secrets. I never told them the full story. How could I? They wouldn't have believed me. But some nights, when the moon is full and the wind howls just right, I can still hear that creature shriek, and I see those glowing, hungry eyes. A constant reminder of the night I sold fireworks to a skinwalker. It's a memory burned into my soul, a scar that will never fade. So if you ever find yourself on a lonely desert road at dusk, and you see a roadside stand, just keep driving. Some things are better left undiscovered. The graveyard shift at a massive, isolated warehouse is already a recipe for unease. The silence is so deep you can hear your own heartbeat, and every metallic groan of the building settling sounds like a footstep. I'd been a security guard there for about 6 months. Easy money, mostly just me, a wall of monitors, and the occasional mouse scurrying across the concrete floor. That was until last Tuesday. It was around 3 a.m., the dead of night, when the first alarm blared. Zone 7, deep in the storage racks, the motion sensor was tripped. I sighed, grabbing my heavy-duty flashlight. It was probably just a pallet of boxers that had shifted, or a bird that had gotten trapped inside. Annoying, but routine. I radioed in the check, my voice echoing in the empty control room. I made my way down the long, cavernous aisles. The beams of my flashlight cut through the darkness, creating dancing shadows that played tricks on my eyes. When I got to Zone 7, everything was still. No fallen boxers, no frantic bird. I swept my light across the racks, from floor to the 20-foot ceiling. Nothing. I shrugged, figuring it was a faulty sensor. I walked back to the control panel at the end of the aisle and reset the alarm. As I turned to leave, it went off again. Same spot. Zone 7. Okay, this was strange. My heart started to beat a little faster. Primera, the bike, more cautiously this time. Again, I found nothing. I stood right where the sensor was pointed, trying to figure out what could be setting it off. I even waved my hand in front of it to make sure it was working. It was. Confused and a little annoyed, I went back to the control room. From my desk, I could pull up the live feed from the motion sensor's logs. It didn't have a camera, just a simple grid that showed where motion was detected. I watched the screen as I reset the system remotely. The alarm silenced. A few seconds passed. Then, a red blip appeared on the grid in Zone 7. It was holding steady, right in the middle of the aisle. The system registered it as a heat signature, roughly the size and shape of a person. My blood ran cold. I was looking at an empty aisle on the camera feed, but the motion tracker was showing a figure standing there. I zoomed in on the camera, squinting, trying to see anything a distortion, a shadow, anything at all. There was nothing, yet the red blip on the tracker remained solid and unmoving. It was as if someone completely invisible was standing there, just watching. I picked up the radio, my hand trembling slightly. Dispatch, this is God 1. I have a persistent motion alarm in Zone 7. The tracker indicates a human-sized presence, but I have a visual and there's nobody there. I repeat, the aisle is empty. The voice that came back was crackly and tired. Copy, Guard 1. Probably a system glitch. We've been having issues with the new software. Try a hard reset on the main panel. A glitch, right? Right. That made sense. My logical brain clung to that explanation like a lifeline, but my gut was screaming that something was very, very wrong. Still, I had a job to do. Taking a deep breath, I headed back out, this time towards the main circuit breakers for the alarm system. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every hair on my body was standing on end. The silence of the warehouse seemed to press in on me, heavy and suffocating. The main panel was on the opposite side of the warehouse, forcing me to walk past the entrance to the aisle for Zone 7. I tried to keep my eyes forward, but I couldn't resist a quick glance down that dark corridor. My flashlight beam sliced through the blackness, and for a split second, I saw it. Or, I think I did. It wasn't a person. It was tall, impossibly thin, and its limbs were bent at angles that weren't humanly possible. Its skin was pale and stretched tight over its bones, and its eyes, they seemed to glow faintly in the darkness, reflecting my light like a predator's. It was there for a heartbeat, and then it was gone, melting back into the shadows between the racks. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. I didn't scream. I couldn't. It was like my lungs had forgotten how to work. Was that real? Was my mind, starved of sleep and company, finally starting to break? I forced myself to move, my legs feeling like lead. Hard reset. Just do the hard reset and get back to the control room. After what felt like an eternity, I reached the panel and through the breakers. The emergency lights flickered on, casting the warehouse in a dim, airy, orange glow. I waited a full minute before flipping them back on. The system word, back to life. I practically ran back to the control room, slamming and locking the door behind me. I collapsed into my chair, my entire body shaking. I stared at the wall of monitors. The Zone 7 alarm was silent. The motion tracker grid was clear. For a moment, I felt a wave of relief. It was a glitch. It at to be. What I thought I saw was just a trick of the light, a shadow, my own terrified imagination running wild. Then my radio crackled to life. It wasn't dispatch. It was a sound, a low, guttural, clicking noise. It was followed by a voice, a distorted, raspy whisper that was a perfect, horrifying mimic of my own. "The aisle is empty," it whispered, repeating the exact words I had said to dispatch. "There's nobody there." I stared at the radio in horror. The sound wasn't coming from the speaker. It was coming from right outside the control room door. The doorknob began to jiggle, slowly at first, then more violently. A heavy scratching sound started, like claws dragging down the metal door. I backed away from the door, grabbing the heaviest object I could find, a fire extinguisher. The scratching stopped. Silence. A new notification popped up on my monitor. Motion alarm, but it wasn't in Zone 7. It was Zone 1. The main entrance, the camera showed the massive roll-up door, sealed shut, but the motion tracker showed a heat signature right in front of it. The red blip moved, contorting into an unnatural, elongated shape, and then it squeezed itself under the tiny gap at the bottom of the door and disappeared outside. I stayed huddled in that room until the sun came up, listening to every sound, my eyes glued to the monitors. When my replacement arrived, he found me pale and shaking. I quit that day. I never told anyone the full story. Who would believe me? But I know what I saw. It wasn't a glitch. The warehouse wasn't haunted by a ghost. It was being hunted by something else, something that could mimic your voice, contort its body, and stand right in front of you, completely unseen. The motion sensor wasn't broken. It was just the only thing that could see the monster standing in the dark. The trail was supposed to be my escape, a 10-mile loop, just me. And the crunch of leaves under my boots. I'd done it 100 times, always getting back to my car just as the sun bled out behind the mountains. But that day, I was running late. Stupid. I know. The forest gets a different kind of quiet when the light goes. It's a heavy quiet, the kind that feels like it's listening. I finally stumbled out of the tree line, heart hammering from the last uphill push. The parking lot was nearly empty. Just a handful of cars silhouetted against the deep purple sky. A wave of relief washed over me. I wasn't completely alone. I fumbled for my keys, my fingers stiff from the cold, when a sound sliced through the stillness. A car alarm. A single, sharp chirp. I glanced over. Nothing. Probably someone locking their car from a distance. Then another chirp from a different car. And another. One by one, each car in the lot let out a single electronic yelp. My blood ran cold. This wasn't random. This was rhythmic. Then came the voice. It wasn't a human voice. It was a synthesized, mechanical sound, exactly like the voice from an old GPS. It came from the alarm of a beat-up pickup truck nearby. Davey. My name. Spelled out, one robotic letter at a time. My breath hitched in my throat. I stood frozen, my keys halfway to the lock on my own car door. Then, a different car, a small sedan, chirped. Davey. My heart felt like it was trying to beat its way out of my chest. This couldn't be real. It was a prank. It had to be. He spun around, scanning the dense woods bordering the lot. Who's there? I yelled, my voice trembling, sounding pathetic and small in the vast emptiness. This isn't funny. The only answer was the rustling of leaves in the breeze. I turned back to my car, deciding to just get in and drive away as fast as humanly possible. As my hand touched the handle, my own car alarm let out a deafening shriek, and through the blare, that same cold, synthesized voice. But this time it was coming from inside my car. They. I scrambled back, tripping over my own feet and landing hard on the gravel. Every car alarm in the lot was now blaring, a chaotic symphony of horns and sirens. And through the cacophony, each one repeated the same thing. A chorus of digital voices all spelling out my name. Derbe and Derbe. It was an auditory assault, a nightmare of noise and light as headlights flashed erratically. My mind was screaming. This was impossible. This was insane. I pushed myself up, my legs feeling like jelly. I had to get away. I couldn't get in my car. I had to run. I turned my back on the flashing, screaming lot and sprinted toward the main road. A quarter mile away, the gravel crunched loudly under my frantic footsteps, almost drowned out by the alarms. But as I ran, a new sound joined the chaos, a sound that made the alarms seem like a gentle lullaby. It was a chittering, clicking noise, accompanied by the impossibly fast scrabble of something running on all fours. It was keeping pace with me, just inside the tree line. I didn't dare look. I just ran harder, my lungs burning, tears of sheer terror streaming down my face. The chittering grew closer, louder. I could hear its breathing now, a wet, guttural rasp. It sounded wrong. Unnatural. Unnatural. It was mimicking the car alarms, but warped, organic. A series of clicks and whistles that sounded sickeningly like DAV. It was toying with me. A shadow detached itself from the trees, long and emaciated, moving with a fluid, horrifying grace. It wasn't a coyote or a bear. The limbs were too long, the joints bent at angles that were just ... wrong. It loped alongside me, its head cocked, watching me with eyes that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. It was gaining. I could feel the ground vibrate with its steps. In a surge of adrenaline-fueled desperation, I risked a glance. For a split second, I saw it clearly. It was pale and hairless, its skin stretched tight over a skeletal frame. Its face was a grotesque parody of a human's, but the mouth was too wide, filled with needle-like teeth. It opened that impossibly wide mouth and a sound came out. Not a chitter, not a growl, but my own voice. "It's just a prank," Dave had said. My voice twisted into a mocking sing-song tone. A scream tore from my throat, raw and animalistic. I didn't know I could make a sound like that. The creature seemed to enjoy it, letting out a series of clicks that sounded like laughter. It was right behind me now. I could smell its scent of damp earth, decay, and something acrid, like burnt electronics. I braced for the impact, for the teeth and claws I knew were coming. Suddenly, headlights washed over us. A truck crested the small hill on the road ahead. The driver slammed on his brakes, his horn blaring, the tires squealing on the asphalt. The creature froze. It hissed, a sound like steam escaping a busted pipe, and in a blur of motion, it recoiled, melting back into the shadows of the forest as if it were never there. The truck driver, a burly man with a white beard, threw his door open. "Son, are you all right? What in God's name was that thing?" I couldn't speak. I just pointed a shaking finger back towards the parking lot. The alarms had stopped. The lot was silent and dark, as if nothing had ever happened. He drove me into the nearest town. I never went back for my car. I left the state the next day and never looked back. Sometimes, late at night, when it's too quiet, I can still hear it. A faint, electronic chirp and a synthesized voice, whispering my name into the dark. I know it's just in my head. At least, I hope it is. But I have a new rule now. I'm never the last one off the trail, and I never, ever park my car at a trailhead after sunset. Some things are better left undisturbed in the woods, and I've no desire to find out what answers when you call its name, or when it calls yours. I work for the Forest Service out of McNairy, Arizona. My assignment that week was simple. Inspect and secure the gates on decommissioned timber roads before the fall rains. The routes are empty this time of year, used only by elk and wind. It is quiet work. You check for tire tracks, make notes, snap photos, move on. On September 14th, 2019, I was sent to Road 611, an old logging stretch through the White Mountains. The locals called it the Dead Road. They said the forest there never grew back, right after the burn. I didn't listen. I took the truck out anyway. The first part of the drive was uneventful. The late sun came through the trees in long orange blades, lighting up the dust in the air. I could hear gravel pinging under the tires, the steady hum of the engine, and the faint chatter of my CB radio. Pine needles clung to the windshield when I slowed to check the first gate. It was chained and tagged, just like it should be. I logged the coordinates, took a picture, and kept moving north. By the time I reached gate 3, it was nearly dark. The air smelled like sap and cold iron, a storm building somewhere out of sight. The radio had gone quiet, not even static, just a low hiss. Outside the window, lightning flickered behind the tree line, turning the pines into sharp silhouettes. I listened to the sound of my own breathing. It was steady, the kind that comes from being alone too long. Then, something small broke the rhythm. The chain on the next gate was swinging. I slowed to a stop and watched. The wind wasn't moving, but the chain swayed as if someone on the other side was tugging it gently, testing the slack. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out. The ground was soft, with old ash and needles. My boots sank with each step. The smell was stronger now, like wet metal or blood left out in the rain. I called out the way we were trained at Forest Service, I said. "If you're out here, I need you to come toward my voice." No answer. Just the clicking of the links against the steel post. I moved closer and shined the light. Past the gate, the beam caught the road winding into blackness. At first, I thought I saw an animal crouched near the ditch. It was too big for a coyote, too low for a deer. Then it unfolded, arms long enough to touch the ground, knees bent the wrong direction. It didn't move like anything I knew. It rose until its head cleared the top of the gate, and I saw the eyes, pale amber and flat like glass. I froze. The radio came alive. "Ranger Hale," a voice said, clear and calm. It was my voice. I looked down at the handset. The mic light wasn't on. "Ranger Hale," it said again. Same tone, same breath. Then the sound cut out. The forest went quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold still. The air felt thick, heavy enough to press against my ears. Behind me, the truck engine ticked in the cold. I started to back away. The chain lifted on its own, slow and deliberate, links rising one after another until the middle hung suspended in midair. There was nothing holding it. My flashlight flickered once, twice. In the second flash, the figure was closer. In the third, it was gone. Only the echo of footsteps moved through the gravel, soft but fast, circling. The smell filled my throat now, copper and dirt. I got in the truck, slammed the door, and turned the key. The starter clicked. No ignition. Then the headlights blinked on by themselves, flooding the trees. A shape moved through the beam. For half a second I saw a hand, gray and long-fingered, slap against the window. The glass cracked down the center. My own reflection wavered behind it, stretched and wrong. Then it was gone. The chain dropped with a metallic snap. When Primera came to the truck, was running, the road ahead was clear. I drove without thinking, one hand tight on the wheel, the other on the radio. Dispatch called me 3 times before I answered. They wanted to know why my GPS signal had disappeared for 7 minutes. I told them it must have been the storm. They asked if the gates were secured. I said yes, all locked. I didn't tell them what I saw. I went back the next morning with the maintenance crew. The chain was there, cold and still, but the gatepost was scarred. Deep grooves ran down the wood as if something had dragged nails through it. The others said it looked like lightning. I let them write that in the report. There were no footprints, no tracks, no reason for what I saw to exist. But the smell was still there, faint and metallic, carried on the morning air. Weeks later, during another night shift, I heard my name come through the CB again. Ranger Hale. Same voice, same tone. I checked with dispatch. They said no one had called. I left the radio on that night, listening. Sometimes the forest talks back, and you learn it is better not to answer. I operate drones for the U.S. Forest Service, under contract for post-fire analysis. Most of what I do is quiet, patient work. Mapping heat signatures, scanning soil loss, logging, wind direction, an elevation. On September 18th, I was assigned to the Hayfork Ridge burn scar in Trinity County, California. The fire was officially cold, only a few smoke plumes trapped in gullies. My supervisor said the area still twitches at night, like something is remembering what burned. I said machines don't care about ghosts. Then I signed the report sheet, loaded my drone case into the truck, and drove into the Black Hills before sunrise. The ridge was quiet. Too quiet for a forest that should have been settling. The smell of ash and resin hung in layers, sharp and metallic. The ground crunched under my boots, every step breaking thin flakes of charcoal. I parked near a line of dead firs and set the launch pad on the edge of an old fire break. Wind 0, humidity 21%, no signal interference. I lifted the drone on a standard grid pattern at 200 feet. Its shadow crossed the gray valley, small and steady. Everything looked normal in the live feed. The black slope, the pale lines of contour, the shape of my own truck parked in the clearing. Just routine field work. When I reviewed the first pass on the tablet, something stood behind my truck. A person. Still, centered, facing the tailgate. I thought it was an old stump until I zoomed in. The shape was clean and upright. A jacket. A hat. Same profile as mine. I looked up from the screen. No one bear. No one bear. Just the truck, my footprints, and a wide ring of untouched ash. I went to procedural. Check perimeter. Scan line of sight. Secure the site. All clear. I rechecked the recording. The figure was there for 6 seconds, then gone between frames. The GPS track for that clip had shifted closer to the truck, even though I hadn't moved. I launched. Again. Second flight. Same grid. The wind was steady. The telemetry perfect. The live feed showed my truck again. Behind it, the figure stood in the same position, a little closer. The drone's altitude drifted 3 feet without command, as if something tugged on the signal. I compensated manually. The image jittered, then locked. The figure scout was smooth, too smooth, without seams or folds. I ended the flight, retrieved the drone, and circled the truck once more. Nothing but footprints. I logged possible artifact on imagery due to contrast. On the third flight, the sensors glitched. The GPS lost satellites, dropped to 7, then reconnected. The signal compass spun twice before holding. The drone turned on its own and pointed its camera directly at me. I adjusted pitch, but it resisted. As if someone else was sharing the controls, the telemetry feed clicked, then spoke through the controller in my voice. Home point updated. The words were flat, and even I hadn't pressed anything. I shut the motors down. The propellers slowed in silence. The smell of hot plastic filled the air. I walked to the back of the truck. A clean handprint streaked across the dust of the tailgate. 5 clear lines curved slightly inward. No pattern of glove texture. Just skin. I took a photo with my phone, then brushed it away. My hand was shaking more than I wanted to admit. I launched one last time to finish the job. The drone rose quickly, the camera facing straight down. Every time I rotated the gimbal toward the burn scar, it drifted back to the truck. The live view stuttered once and cleared. The figure stood at the rear bumper again, closer than before. Its head tilted slightly left, as if listening. The air felt different, denser, full of pressure, like being underwater. The sound of the drone thinned out, and even though I could still hear the rotors, the vibration in the ground below my boots came a split second too late. The radio mic clicked. My own voice again. Survey complete. I turned it off, but it came through the headset a second time. Quieter, slower, stretched. Survey complete. The shadow of the drone on the ground didn't line up with its real position. It looked lower than it should have been, as if something taller was standing between it and the sun. I hit the return command. The drone dropped straight down without waiting for confirmation. The live feed zoomed on its own, closing in on the truck bed where I was standing. The reflection on the rear window showed 2 figures. One was me. The other stood beside me, taller, featureless, its outline shaking slightly like heat distortion. I pulled the emergency cutoff. The rotors stopped mid. The drone fell, landed hard, and bounced once on the pad. When I reached it, the camera was still recording. Lens pointed at the sky. Clouds slid past in silence. Back at base, I uploaded the footage. The first 3 flights stitched normally, but the 4th file wouldn't open through the mapping software. I played it as a raw video. It showed my truck from behind. The door-open cables coiled neatly on the ground. I walked into frame, bent over the drone, and froze. The reflection in the truck window smiled. My mouth did not. Then the file cut to black. I submitted the report as data corrupted due to environmental interference. The system flagged the anomaly for review, but nobody asked questions. 2 weeks later, I was sent to another site near the Oregon border. New burn, new ridge. When I unpacked the drone, the flight log named the last location automatically. Hayfork Ridge. I deleted it twice. It wrote itself back. That night, while reviewing fresh footage, I stopped at frame 42. A human shape stood behind my truck again. The same coat, same stance, same tilt of the head. The GPS tag read exactly the same coordinates as the last flight from Hayfork Ridge, even though I was 200 miles away. Now, I still fly my surveys. I still record clean maps and perfect thermal grids, but before every launch, I check the reflection on the truck window. Sometimes I see only myself. Other times, there is a shadow standing just behind my shoulder, waiting for the props to start turning. When I take a step away from the lens, it takes a step too, and when I stop, it keeps moving, half a beat late, until the footage ends. I have worked seasonal firewatch in northern Montana for 6 summers now. My post sits 22 miles from the nearest road, perched on a ridge that overlooks the Flathead Range. The tower is small, just a single room of pine boards and glass. There is a cot, a stove, a desk, and the logbook where every observation is written by hand. It is quiet work, the kind that strips away everything you don't need. Each day you record temperature, wind, and visibility. Each night, you listen to the trees breathe. The Forest Service trains you to stay calm. Fires start small, animals move in patterns, and people see strange things when they spend too long alone. You learn to separate what is real from what is noise. I took pride in that. I liked the solitude, the honesty of the work. Most of my shifts began the same way: coffee at dawn, a weather report at 7, and long hours of scanning for smoke. By evening, the mountains turned violet and the timberline glowed as if lit from within. After sunset, the only sound was the wind around the guy wires and the faint hum of the radio. The first odd thing happened on July 14th. I woke before sunrise and saw that the logbook on the desk had been left open. I never leave it that way. I have a habit of closing it flat to keep dust from settling on the pages. I assumed the wind had blown it open. Then I saw my handwriting. A new entry had been written under the previous night's notes. The line was short: 4:16 a.m. Low visibility, 1 silhouette East Ridge. The signature beneath was mine. I rubbed my eyes, certain I had written it in my sleep. I checked the timestamp on the radio logs. Nothing had transmitted at that hour. The sky outside was clear. That afternoon, I walked the ridge trail to check for hikers. There were no prints in the soil, no broken branches, no sign of anyone near the tower. The air smelled of sap and frost. When I returned, I erased the line and made a note about the mistake. That night, I locked the door, secured the hatch, and slept with the radio beside my cot. The static of the weather channel lulled me out. I woke again just before dawn. The logbook was open to a new page. The entry read, 4:16 a.m. Same silhouette, closer. The handwriting was mine again. Same slant, same épaisseur. I checked the door. Still locked. The key was where I left it. The temperature inside the cabin was cold enough to see my breath. I lit the stove and tried to laugh it off, telling myself I was overtired. Solitude does strange things to memory. I wrote the date again, carefully, and signed my name beneath it in a different color of ink to prove I was awake. The following days passed without trouble. The air grew drier, the horizon sharp. By the 20th, the first thunderstorms had rolled through. Lightning hit a slope 5 miles north, and I spent 2 hours tracking the smoke column until it died out. That night, the radio crackled with faint chatter from the next tower east. An old ranger named Keller who had been on the line for 20 years. I told him about the entries as a joke. He didn't laugh. "You're not the first to see that," he said. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Keep your name out of the book. That's how it finds you." I wanted to ask what he meant, but the signal died before I could. I didn't hear from him again. 3 nights later, I woke to the sound of something moving below the tower. It wasn't an animal. The steps were too slow to even wood creaked under weight, followed by the soft scrape of metal. I grabbed a flashlight and aimed it through the floor grating. Nothing moved in the beam. I stepped outside onto the catwalk. The air was thick with fog. My breath came out white. "Primera K. Lead down Forest Service. Identify yourself." The wind shifted. A shape stood at the edge of the clearing, still and dark against the gray. I saw no face, no color, only the outline of a person looking up at me. I blinked, and it was gone. At dawn, the logbook held a new entry. 4:16 a.m. entry. Acknowledged. The signature beneath was mine, but the pen used was black, not blue. I had no black pens in the tower. I closed the book and pushed it into a drawer under the desk. I stayed awake that next night with the lights on. Around midnight, the radio began to hum. No signal, just a steady vibration that climbed in pitch until it sounded like breath pressed against the microphone. Then a voice came through, flat and dry. "Visibility clear," it said. "Writing complete." The voice was mine. I spoke into the handset. "Who is this?" The response came instantly. "You are." Then, the channel cut. The following morning, I climbed down to the clearing. The ground was covered in frost, even though the air was mild. My boot prints were the only ones there, except for one set of tracks that circled the tower twice before vanishing into the brush. They looked almost human, but ended in narrow points, as if the toes had pressed straight through the soil. I followed them until they faded on the rock. The forest was silent. Not even the jays called. When I returned, I found the drawer open and the logbook resting on the desk. The black pen lay beside it. The page was blank except for one sentence at the bottom. "He signed yours." I tore the page out and threw it into the stove. The flame burned higher than it should have, white instead of orange. The smoke that came from it smelled like wet fur and iron. That evening, the wind began to shake the tower. The sky outside was red with sunset. I checked the horizon, saw nothing, then sat down to write a final report. I planned to leave the next morning, hike to the base camp, and call it an equipment failure. I packed my gear and lay down without turning off the light. Around 4, I woke to the feeling of pressure in my chest, like someone standing beside the cot. I opened my eyes. The door to the deck was wide open. Cold air rolled in. On the desk, the logbook sat open. The page glowed faintly in the lamplight. My hand was resting on it, fingers around the pen. The words beneath were still wet. For 16 a.m. departure confirmed. The signature matched perfectly. I stumbled back, knocking over the chair. The door banged against the frame. Outside, the clearing was full of movement. Not running, not walking. Who's this slow, careful shift of something that knew I was watching? I caught a glimpse of it between the pines. It looked like a man, but the skin was wrong. Stretched too tight, the proportions slightly off. The head turned toward the tower, and even from that distance I could see the face. It was my own. The eyes reflected the lantern light. The thing smiled once and stepped backward into the fog. When the relief crew arrived 2 days later, they found the tower sealed, the windows fogged from inside. The logbook was missing. The radio log stopped at 4:16 a.m. The supervisor said I must have left during a breakdown, maybe walked off trail, but they never found prints beyond the clearing. I don't remember how I got back to town. The doctors said exhaustion, maybe stress. They let me go after a few days. I tried to move on. I took a desk job in Missoula, away from the woods, but the habit stayed. Every morning I wake at 4:16 without fail. On the table beside my bed is a notepad I never use. Each time I look, there is a line written in my own hand. Visibility clear. Shift continues. And beneath it, my name. I joined Clearwater County Search and Rescue last winter. After years as an Army medic, I thought I knew what isolation felt like. But the Idaho mountains have their own silence. By March, I was cleared for field training. The exercise was simple. Track a distress beacon through the Bitterroot Range, locate the victim, and extract before dark. A control scenario. Nothing dangerous. The morning air was sharp enough to sting. We loaded into trucks with our GPS units and radios. The lead instructor, Tanner, briefed us on the frequency and rules. The beacon would be hidden somewhere north of Trail Ridge. Stay in pairs, he said. If you lose line of sight, stop. Don't chase static. My partner, Brooke, and I moved through snowpack that crunched like glass. The beacon pinged every 10 seconds, a clear tone that echoed through the pines. We followed it uphill, breath visible in the cold. After 2 miles, the GPS showed the signal shifting 50 yards north. Beacons don't move. Maybe the wind's bouncing it, Brooke said. Through granite? I asked. She didn't answer. The tone grew louder as we climbed. At the next clearing, we found smooth snow, except for one long drag mark leading toward the ridge. Then we saw prints, bare feet. Narrow, deep. Each toe pressed like claws. The beacon pulse came again, now from every direction at once. We read Yordine. "Beacon's moving?" I said. Tanner's voice crackled through. "Negative. Beacon is fixed at your location." "It's not," Brooke said. "It's walking." Static swallowed the reply. We waited, listening. The wind hummed through the trees, carrying something that wasn't quite a voice. Then the beacon tone doubled in strength. My screen flashed red, showing the signal directly behind us. I turned the light. Nothing but trees. Then, 30 meters back, a figure crossed between trunks, too fast for the eye to track. The snow didn't brake where it moved. The tone spiked once, then stopped. We backed toward the ridge. Brooke whispered that a receiver now showed her own transponder code to identical IDs, one tagged with my call sign. The duplicate moved when I moved, then moved again after I stopped, half a beat behind, like an echo that had learned to walk. Footsteps sounded above the ridge. Slow, steady, heavy. I aimed my light upward. A human shape stood against the gray sky, arms too long, head tilted too far. I called out, "Rescue team, identify yourself." From the radio, my own voice answered, perfect and flat. "Rescue team, identify yourself." Brooke said. We had to leave. The radio clicked again, Tanner's signal breaking through. "Return to base. Weather's closing." We started down fast. Snow began to fall, thick and heavy. Within minutes, the trail vanished. Both GPS units blinked out. The beacon returned, now without pattern, pulsing like a heartbeat, circling us in the dark. We reached a frozen creek and stopped. The air smelled metallic, sharp. Brooke checked her screen. "It's on top of us." The ping became a hiss. Across the ice, something moved. It rose upright, tall and gray shoulders too narrow, face smooth and pale. It stood still, watching. The snow bent beneath it without sound. We stepped back slowly. For every step we took, it took one forward. Its arms dragged across the ice like tools. My receiver flashed again, our coordinates broadcasting from behind the figure. Then my own voice spoke from the trees, repeating those same numbers. "Found them," it said. The next clear thing I remember is the thump of helicopter rotors. We had stumbled into the extraction zone near dawn, both half-frozen, both silent. The instructor said we'd gotten disoriented and followed our own footprints in circles. They found the beacon sitting on a rock beside the creek, still transmitting. The problem was, ours had never left base camp. It was still locked in the supply case. 2 instructors went back to retrieve the dummy unit. They said the snow was clean, no tracks, no animals, but on the ridge, pressed deep into the ice, They found coordinates carved in straight lines. Our coordinates. And beneath them, a single word returned. I finished training but never took another call. I moved to dispatch, where the signals are only numbers on the screen. Sometimes at night, a stray beacon still comes through. Same tone, same frequency. It drifts across the map in circles, steady as a heartbeat, always moving against the wind. I do field maintenance for a telecom contractor out of Las Vegas. Most of my jobs are dead relay sites in the desert. The kind the government stopped using but never took off the map. On Yuli 9 TH, I was sent to decommission Relay Station 19B, west of Amargosa Valley, listed as non-powered since 2013. The old guy at the service depot told me that one still lit up at night, even with the mains. Cut, I told him. Lights don't burn without power. Then I drove out alone. The station sat in a bowl of sand and scrubbed, one square concrete building behind a leaning chain-link fence, a single tower beside it. Heat shimmered over everything. The sky was flat and pale. The generator outside was rusted open, tank bonadry. The main feed from the pole was cut and wrapped. Inside, the racks were dusty and cold. No fan noise, no indicator lights. I wrote the coordinates in my log, checked the junction box, checked the breaker panel. Everything said 0. Outside the window, the floodlight over the door kept shining, white and steady, like it was pulling light from nowhere. I told myself some tech before me must have left a battery in the ceiling. I followed the lights cable through the conduit. It ran into the wall and ended in a sealed box with nothing connected. My meter stayed flat. I went outside, unplugged the only live cord I had, and looked up. The floodlight did not blink. It was brighter now, casting hard shadows across sand that had no footprints but mine. Then the radio on my belt hissed. Just static. Then a clipped voice. 19 Bravo. Active. I checked the handset. The transmit light was off. I said as calm as I could, "This is maintenance. Identify." The radio repeated me back in my own voice. The air pressure dropped like weather moving in, but the sky stayed clear. The insects stopped. Even the wind against the tower cables cut out. The smell in the building went from dust to sharp, like hot copper. I walked back inside and found the dead equipment racks alive again. Grain LEDs blinking in sequence. A tiny printer I hadn't even noticed started spooling paper. Every line said the same thing. Technician on site. Awaiting input. Then one more line appeared without a keystroke. Input received. Outside, I heard the metal casing of the floodlight turn. When I stepped to the door, it was already pointing at me. I told myself it was motion detection. I stepped left. The light followed smooth. No lag. I stepped right. It tracked again. The radio cracked. Relay 19. My voice side exact tone, exact breath. Ready to receive. Then a second voice repeated it half a second later, like something was practicing. My shadow on the floor stretched long, but the head on the shadow tilted when mine did not. The hum in the walls rose until I felt it in my teeth. That was the point where there was nothing left to explain as a fault. I turned for the truck. The light chased me across the yard, hot on my shoulders. The tower vibrated like something heavy had climbed it. I looked back once. A shape stood right under the fixture, gray in the glare. Too tall, arms too long, head tipped to the side like it was listening through the concrete. It lifted one hand and pressed it to the wall. The floodlight flared white enough to wash the desert flat. For a second, my vision doubled. One of me was running for the fence. One of me was still standing in the doorway. By morning, the desert looked ordinary again. Wind had filled in any marks around the tower. The generator was cold. The breakers were still open. The floodlight was still on, burning like grid power was pumping through it. On the wall by the door, someone had written in chalk, "Maintenance complete. Jota, Mercer, Dois e 17. Amy Tatis." My name. That is how I write my M. I'd spent the whole night outside that room. I took a photo on my phone. In the photo there was no chalk, just a pale smear shaped like a hand on the inside of the concrete. Back at the office, I marked the station as decommissioned and noted a lighting anomaly so I didn't have to invent power readings. The supervisor shrugged and said desert sites get weird capacitance. He scheduled a follow-up visit with another tech. That tech called in once, at the highway, and then never again. When they found his truck, the engine was idling and the gate was open. The floodlight was still burning in full sun. The report said he probably walked out into the heat. Nobody put my photo in the file. A week later, my home scanner woke itself at 2:17 a.m. The channel was quiet for a second. Then a voice came through under the static. It was mine, tired and flat. "Relay 19, it said. "Ready to receive." Then, just behind it, something else said the same thing. A hair too slow, like it was still getting used to the words. I'm a contract geologist for the Colorado Bureau of Land Management. Most of my work involves mapping abandoned mines and assessing whether they re-safe to seal or too unstable to touch. The pay isn't great, but I like the quiet. No people, no phone reception, just earth and time. On February 9th, 2023, I was assigned to inspect an old silver shaft outside Gunnison. The paperwork said it was sealed in 1981, though no one could confirm who did it. At the diner that morning, an old rancher told me the mine was still breathing. He said if you go down far enough, you start hearing your own boots coming back out. I laughed it off and told him echoes do strange things underground. Then I signed the access sheet and drove out into the snow. The road ended at a ridge of pale granite. The mine sat behind a sagging chain-link fence, with a warning sign half buried in ice. The timbers around the entrance were warped from decades of freeze and thaw, and the whole frame leaned forward like it was exhaling. I clipped a safety line to the gateposts and switched on my headlamp. The first breath inside felt colder than outside, sharp with the smell of rust and wet stone. I ran standard checks for oxygen, carbon dioxide, and methane. Everything came back normal. I logged the readings aloud for the recorder, every number grounding me in procedure. The tunnel sloped gently at first, the walls narrowing to a single track of packed silt. My boots crunched in steady rhythm, the sound of work I'd done 100 times before. I paused every 30 meters to make chalk marks, take a photo, and check the temperature. The beam of my lamp carved through the dark like a white blade, catching flecks of mica in the walls. My breath fogged and disappeared. Everything felt routine, predictable, safe. Then I noticed the echo of my steps wasn't keeping pace. It lagged, just slightly, half a second behind, like something was walking the same path after me. I stopped. The echo stopped. I took another step. The echo didn't come, just silence pressing in from every direction. I brushed it off as an acoustic dead zone and kept moving. About 200 meters in, the tunnel split. The left side opened into a broad drift, the right into a narrow chute. I took the left and marked it with orange tape. The floor was coated in dust so fine it held prints like snow. I could see my trail perfectly behind me, each tread identical, crisp, and clean. When I reached the next marker, I stopped to write in my log. That's when I saw them. Footprints. Fresh ones. Ahead of me. They looked exactly like mine. Same tread, same spacing. Even the same small chip on the right heel from where I caught a nail last week. But they weren't leading deeper in, they were leading out, back toward daylight. I crouched to inspect them, feeling my pulse crawl into my throat. The edges were sharp, the dust undisturbed. I shined the light back the way I'd come. My own trail ended 10 paces behind me. Between that last print and the next one, there was nothing. I told myself I'd doubled back without realizing it, maybe turned around somewhere near the junction, but the compass said otherwise. I was still facing the same direction. I started taking photos, hands trembling just enough to blur the frame. My radio crackled once, then fell quiet. I checked the battery. Full charge. I called out for a signal test anyway. The tunnel threw my voice back, slow and warped, like someone repeating it through water. The air changed first. It felt heavier, charged, like the air before a lightning strike. My headlamp dimmed for a second, before brightening again. The smell of metal grew stronger, mixed with something faintly sweet, like decaying roots. took one step forward. My boot sank into the dust, and I watched as another print formed half a meter ahead of me. Heel first, then toe. Perfect. My own size, my own stride. I turned off my lamp and stood in the dark. The silence was complete. No wind, no drip, no movement. Then, from somewhere farther down, came the sound of footsteps. Slow, even deliberate. They stopped when I stopped. They breathed when I did. The hair on my arms lifted. I turned the light back on. The tunnel was empty, but now there were two sets of prints leading toward the entrance, both mine. One slightly fresher than the other. I started back, fast but careful, keeping the beam low. My radio burst alive again. Static, then my own voice. Calm and flat. Survey complete. Exit logged. 2:17 p.m. I froze. The watch on my wrist read 2:17. I hadn't spoken a word. Then the transmission repeated, slower, drawn out, the tone wrong, like someone imitating my cadence but missing the rhythm. The sound echoed long after the static stopped. I broke into a run. The rope line tugged at my waist as the tunnel seemed to stretch longer with every stride. The light ahead looked brighter than before, almost white. The walls pulsed faintly with vibration, a low hum crawling through the stone. My lamp flickered. I kept my eyes down and saw the dust ripple under invisible steps just ahead of me. Whatever it was walking the same line I was. Half a heartbeat sooner. The white light swelled until I had to squint. I stumbled out into the open air and hit the snow hard. The world was silent. The wind had died. My truck was parked exactly where I left it. I turned to look back. The entrance gaped black and still. My footprints ended just at the threshold. None let out. I sat on the tailgate until my breathing steadied. I told myself the prints had been a trick of air pressure. Maybe fine dust shifting in the dark. That's what I wrote in the report. Stable, minor air current distortion. No hazards noted, but the recorder on my chest told a different story. The last line before it cut out was my own voice saying, "Survey complete. Exit logged." Then a second voice followed, lower, slower, whispering the same words, as if learning how to say them. I haven't gone underground since. I stick to soil sampling now. Surface level. Nothing deeper than a shovel's reach. But sometimes, when I'm alone in the field, I catch the sound of boots crunching behind me, half a second out of sync. And when I stop to listen, the sound keeps going. Out ahead, toward the light. The night air on Route 666, or the Devil's Highway, as the old-timers call it, has a way of getting under your skin. It's a cold that has nothing to do with the temperature. I learned that the hard way, hauling a load of industrial parts from Gallup, New Mexico, to Monticello, Utah. It was just me, my rig, and the endless ribbon of asphalt, disappearing into the inky blackness of the Navajo Nation. My name's Jack, and I've been driving trucks for 20 years. I've seen my share of strange things out on the lonely highways of America, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for that night. The moon was a pale sliver, offering little comfort against the vast, oppressive darkness. The only sounds were the hum of my engine and the crackle of the CB radio, my only lifeline to the outside world. I was about an hour out of Gallup, deep in the heart of the reservation, when the feeling started, a primal sense of being watched. I scanned my mirrors, but there was nothing behind me. The road ahead was empty. I chalked it up to fatigue, the highway playing tricks on a tired mind. I took a long swig of lukewarm coffee and cranked up the radio, hoping some classic rock would shake the jitters. But the feeling persisted, growing stronger, like a physical pressure against the cab of my truck. The hairs on my arms stood on end. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. That's when I decided to reach out, to hear another human voice. I picked up the CB mic. "Breaker 19, this is Road Dog. Anyone got a copy out on the Devil's Highway tonight? It's a lonely one. Static. Just dead air." That was unusual. Usually, there's some chatter. Another driver looking to kill time. I tried again. Come on. Anyone out there? Road dog, looking for a friendly voice. Over. More static. I was about to hang up the mic when a voice crackled through the speaker. It was faint, distorted, like it was coming from a long way off. Copy that, road dog. You're not alone. Alone. A wave of relief washed over me. Glad to hear it, friend. Where are you headed? The reply was slow, each word punctuated by a burst of static. Nowhere. And everywhere. A chill snaked down my spine. The voice didn't sound right. It was raspy, guttural, and had a strange, lilting quality to it. It sounded inhuman. Copy that, I stammered, my hands suddenly slick with sweat. Just keep the shiny side up. I waited for a sign-off, a 10-4, or a catch you on the flip side. Instead, what came through the radio was laughter. It wasn't a human laugh. It was a high-pitched, cackling sound that scraped against my ear. It was the sound a hyena might make if it learned to mimic human mirth. A sound full of malice and hunger. My blood ran cold. I slammed the mic back into its holder, my heart hammering against my ribs. The laughter continued, echoing in the small cab, seeming to come from all around me. I glanced at my mirrors again, and this time, I saw it. Far behind me, 2 points of light. Headlights. No, they were too high off the ground, and they glowed with a feral, amber intensity. They weren't headlights. Wary eyes, panic took over. I floored the accelerator, the engine roaring in protest. My rig lurched forward, eating up the miles. But when I looked in the mirror again, the eyes were closer. They were keeping pace, effortlessly. The laughter from the CB grew louder, more frantic. A chorus of deranged glee. I fumbled to turn the radio off, but the knob wouldn't budge. The laughter was trapped in the cab with me. Then, I saw movement at the side of the road. A large animal, a coyote maybe, sprinting alongside the truck. But it was too big, its legs too long, its gait unnervingly human. It ran on all fours, its head turned to look directly at me, and in the faint glow of my dashboard, I saw its face. It was a twisted mockery of a canine, with intelligent, hateful eyes that burned with that same amber light. Its mouth was pulled back in a grotesque grin, revealing rows of sharp teeth. The laughter on the radio merged with a new sound, the rhythmic thump of something hitting the side of my trailer. Thump, thump, thump. It was trying to get in. The coyote thing at my window leaped, its claws scraping against the glass with a sound like nails on a chalkboard. I swerved, the whole rig groaning as the tires screamed. The creature fell away, but the eyes in my mirror were still there, unwavering. Suddenly, a new voice cut through the cackling on the CB. It was clear and calm, an old man's voice. Driver, do not look at it. Do not acknowledge it. Keep your eyes on the road and pray. Whatever you do, do not stop. It was an old Navajo man, his voice a beacon of sanity in the madness. They feed on fear, son. They twist what you hear. That's not a CB signal. That's them in your head. Just as he finished speaking, the laughter on the radio stopped. Absolute silence. The thumping on the trailer ceased. I dared a glance at my side mirror. The coyote thing was gone. I looked in the rearview mirror. The amber eyes had vanished. The oppressive feeling in the cab lifted, replaced by the simple, clean cold of the desert night. You still there? I whispered into the mic, my voice trembling. I'm here, the old man's voice replied. You're almost through their territory. Just a few more miles. They don't like to stray too far from their hunting grounds. We talked for the next 10 minutes, his calm voice keeping the terror at bay. He didn't explain what they were, and I didn't ask. I knew. I'd heard the stories from other drivers. Tailies whispered at truck stops about the Skinwalker, the Navajo shapeshifters. When the first lights of Montetilo appeared on the horizon, the old man's voice said, "You're safe now." wrote Doug. Be careful on your return. The highway doesn't forget. Then, with a soft click, he was gone. I never heard his voice on the CB again. I've driven that route a dozen times since, but never again at night. Sometimes, when the static on the radio hits just right, I think I can hear it, a faint, high-pitched cackle, just on the edge of hearing. A reminder of Channel 9, the Devil's Highway, and the laugh that answered back. Thanks for tuning into our story tonight. If you have your own chilling encounter from the road, share it in the comments below. We'd love to hear it. And if you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more stories from the dark side of the highway. Stay safe out there. I maintain remote data towers for the National Climate Network. It's quiet work, mostly routine calibration and battery checks. On November 6th, 2022, I was assigned to inspect Station 428, a wind and temperature relay high above the timberline west of Leadville, Colorado. The satellite log said the anemometer had recorded a constant 61 miles per hour for 72 hours straight. The nearest radar sweep showed clear skies and zero wind. The technician before me said that ridge never stayed calm for long. The old locals said the wind up there remembers names. I told them weather's just numbers. Then I drove out before first light. The access trail wound upward through frost-glazed trees and patches of black rock. My snowcat engine groaned against the climb, tracks cutting through layers of frozen needles. The higher I went, the thinner the air felt, pressing against my chest with each breath. When I killed the engine at the ridge, silence flooded in. No birds, no wind. Just stillness so complete it felt like pressure on my ears. The tower stood in the open clearing, pale steel against the sky the color of ash. The anemometer at the top was spinning fast enough to blur. Yet the air around me was perfectly still. I unpacked my kit and walked toward it. The snow under my boots crunched sharp, echoing too loudly against the still air. The instrument shack was half buried in drift, the door stiff from cold. Inside, the walls hummed faintly from the battery array. The monitors glowed steady green. Wind, 61 miles per hour. Direction north-north, as constant. I unplugged the primary data cable. The reading did not change. I unplugged the backup. Still no change. I ran diagnostics, but the signal never dropped. I stepped outside again to check the mast directly. The air felt dense, like I was wading through invisible water. The blades above turned in perfect rhythm, smooth and tireless. I climbed the ladder and rested my gloved hand near them. Not even a hint of breeze brushed my skin. When I pulled back, the rotation stuttered once, then resumed faster, a faint whine rising from the metal. I checked the bearings, the weather vane, the wiring conduit. All of it was normal. Only the motion was wrong. Back inside, I watched the numbers pulse. 61, 63, 61 again. The pressure gauge began to twitch in rhythm with the readings, like a slow heartbeat. I cut the main breaker. Every light on the panel went out except one, a small green diode at the wind monitor port. The hum in the floor deepened. My radio crackled. Station 42 reporting sustained wind at 61, said a voice that was unmistakably mine. I froze. The mic on my belt was off. The air changed then. The cold thickened into something heavy and electric. I could taste metal on my tongue, sharp and dry. The paper logbook lifted slightly on the table as if the air itself was swelling. Outside, the whine from the blades grew louder, high enough to make my teeth ache. I stepped to the door. The snow at the threshold rose in small ripples, like something moving beneath it. I called for base contact again. No response. The static in my headset was rhythmic, rising and falling with the same tempo as the pressure gauge. I walked into the clearing and looked up. The anemometer had stopped completely. The wind vane pointed north and did not move. The silence was complete again, thick and waiting. I took a slow breath. The instant the air left my lungs, the blades began to spin backward. The tower vibrated like a living thing. The snow around the base shifted in a widening circle, grains lifting and hanging in mid. The vibration climbed into a low note that felt more in my bones than in my ears. The radio came alive. My voice sighed, shut it down, slow and distorted. like someone dragging the words through water. The light from my headlamp flickered across the snow. I saw the shadow of the tower stretched longer, too long for the distance, bending toward me. One of the anemometer blades snapped and fell, striking the ground with a dull ring. The others kept spinning, even faster, the hum building to a single sharp tone that stopped without fading. When the sound ended, everything froze. I turned and ran for the snowcat. My boots broke through a crust of ice with every step. At the tree line, wind came from nowhere, slamming against my back. It screamed through the pines, carrying the same pitch as the tower's hum. My wrist monitor blinked one last reading from Station 42A. Wind speed, 61 miles per hour. Exactly. I reached the base camp near sunset. The air was calm again. I wrote my report in short, plain sentences. Sensor malfunction. Bearing jammed. Possible electrical feedback. 2 days later, a replacement technician hiked up to install a new unit. He said the entire mast was encased in ice. The blades fused together into a perfect circle. The odd part, he said, was that the ice showed motion blur, as if it had frozen mid-spin. I never went back, but sometimes, when the night is completely still, the base receiver lights up for no reason. One feed, from one mountain, repeats the same number again and again. Wind speeds, always 61. And if I listen closely, beneath the static, I can hear a voice reading it aloud. The voice sounds exactly like mine. I work pipeline integrity for a regional energy contractor out of Midland, Texas. Most days I'm checking sensors, recalibrating gauges, and logging leaks that no one else bothers to find. It's lonely work across wide country, but I don't mind the quiet. On May 12th, I was dispatched to verify a pressure fault along Line 17, a 30-year-old natural gas feed that cuts across the desert north of Pecos. The alert flagged at Station 14B, an unmonitored stretch with no surface access for 5 miles. A field rep on the radio told me the alarm kept tripping every night at the same time. I joked that maybe the sand was breathing. Then I drove out there to see for myself. The terrain was flat and colorless, nothing but sagebrush and sand ridges for miles. The heat shimmered low to the ground, bending the horizon. I parked beside the maintenance marker, a sun-bleached post with the line coordinates carved halfway off. The air was still. Too still for that hour. When I opened the cab door, the smell of dry dust and faint sulfur hit me at once. I grabbed the gauge kit, the line schematic, and a shovel, then started my walk across the site. The only sound was the wind brushing across my suit fabric and the faint squeal of the truck cooling behind me. I found the sensor junction where the pressure alarm had triggered. The metal cap was buried just beneath the sand, still warm from the sun. I brushed it clean and connected my handheld reader. The line pressure was stable. No fault, no leak, nothing unusual. I tapped the screen again. The value dropped for 1 second, then spiked above maximum, as if something had pushed against the inside of the pipe. I reset the monitor and waited. The sand under my knees shifted, subtle but steady, like a slow pulse. I thought it might be venting gas, pressure waves from deeper in the system. I set the microphone probe into the ground, the headset filled with a low, rhythmic thump, evenly spaced. 2 regular 4-gas movement. 4 beats. Pause. 4 beats again, a pattern. I switched frequencies. The same rhythm came through the backup channel, louder this time, as if the sound were closer to the surface. When I looked down, the sand was moving with it. I dug faster, clearing a section of pipe 3 feet across. The metal was smooth, but warm, far warmer than it should have been for that depth. I set my hand on it to feel the vibration. It wasn't random pressure at all. It was a heartbeat. Slow, steady, alive. Every few seconds, the line bulged slightly, the surface flexing against my palm. Then the gauge alarm screamed through my headset. Flatland tone, every sensor, upstream tripping one after another. The ground went quiet. Then came a soft sound from beneath the sand, like a breath drawn in. The air around me changed, growing heavy with the smell of iron and rot. I stepped back, pulling the probe from the soil, but the pulse returned. Faster now. I could feel it through my boots, a deep rhythm that crawled up through the soles. My radio clicked alive. A voice came through. It was mine, calm and tired. Pressure normal, no anomalies detected. The radio wasn't keyed. My hand was still at my side. I turned to leave. The sand beside the pipeline rose in a slow wave, maybe 2 feet high, and split open down the middle. Something moved just beneath the surface, long and jointed. Pressing against the dirt from inside, I caught a flash of metal, or bone, or both. The alarm tone changed pitch, turning from a steady beep into something that almost sounded like breathing. I stumbled backward and fell. The vibration spread outward, rolling under the sand to warn me. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The desert was silent again. No wind, no sound, just my own heartbeat hammering in my ears. The pipe beneath the sand was still warm, but the pulse had vanished. I packed my equipment without writing the final readings. When I looked back one last time, the sand over the junction had smoothed itself flat. The ground looked untouched. Back at the station, I filed a short report. Pressure irregularities due to sensor error. No physical damage observed. I deleted the audio from the probe recorder. The waveform wasn't mechanical. It was organic, layered, like 2 heartbeats playing over each other. I told myself it was an echo, maybe my own pulse traveling through the soil. Now, at night, I can still feel that rhythm sometimes. It comes through the mattress, faint but steady, matching my heartbeat until it isn't. Then it keeps going, slow and deliberate, long after mine has stopped. I run night shift for the County Highway Department in central Wisconsin. Winter work is brine, blade, and patience. On January 14th, I drew Route 29 between Marathon City and Abbott. 12 miles of open farm road that ices quicker than the radio can warn you. The foreman said the stars meant black ice by dawn. An old driver told me that stretch never dries after midnight. I said, "Salt and sun, take care of everything." Then I rolled out alone with a full hopper and a tank of 30% brine. The night was clear and windless, moon throwing a dull shine over stubble fields and grain bins. The cab smelled like wet canvas and salt. The spinner controller blinked steady at 400 pounds per lane mile. Pavement sensor read 12 degrees. My amber beacons pulsed over white lines, and the chains on the plow shoes tapped a rhythm I could have driven by with my eyes closed. I called mile marker 151 in 2D shop. No reply. That was normal out here. When the base antenna froze, what was not normal was the sheen in my mirror. The road behind me looked darker than the road ahead, like rain had followed the truck. I checked the spinner camera. The feed showed a clean cone of crystals fanning the lane. I toggled the auger down to half flow. The cone narrowed. The dark strip behind me did not. At 154, the pavement temp ticked up to 15 for 1 second, then down again, as if the road had exhaled warm air. I pulled off on the farm access and stepped out. No wind, no sound, but the ticking exhaust. When my boots hit the blacktop, the surface under the beacons looked wet enough to mirror the plow blade. I wiped my glove over it. The glove came away dry. I went procedural. Spinner off. Auger off. I idled 225 and watched the mirror. The dark strip stayed glued to the truck, sliding with me like a shadow, even though I was throwing nothing. I put the truck in neutral and let the grade take me. The strip slid uphill against the crown, keeping pace off my rear wheels. My radio hissed once and died. I keyed up anyway. Unit 6 at 155, checking an equipment fault. My own voice came back in my ear, half a second later. Unit 6 at 155, checking an equipment fault. The transmit light on the handset was dark. The air pressure in the cab changed the way it does when a semi blows past, but the road was empty. The world went quiet enough that the spinner bearings should have sounded like a grinder. They were silent. The smell in the cab shifted from brine to something more metallic. A penny taste at the back of the throat. I thumbed a dash switch and hit the floodlights. The beam caught a stripe of wet running against the slope of the pavement. It curled toward the truck, as if pulled. When I rolled forward 10 feet, the stripe rolled with me. Not under the tires, but alongside them, a dark ribbon keeping speed. I talked myself through the data. No wind, no spray, pavement at 12, tank at 180 gallons, controller green. Nothing to push water upstream. The CB crackled again, loud enough to make me jump. Unit 6, my voice said. Flat and calm, bridge deck wet, reduce speed. I looked up at the mile marker. There was no bridge for 2 miles. In the mirror, something moved in the dark lane. Not a car, not an animal. The reflection of my taillights bent inward like the lane lines were bowing to meet them. The dark ribbon split into 2 and ran along my center chute. Ribbons of shine, climbing metal without touching it. I set the brake, killed the beacons, and stepped down. The cold hit hard. The strip slid past my boots and stopped at the driver door. It rose an inch, like a bubble under glass. I could see my face in it the way you see yourself in black ice. My reflection blinked too late. The ribbon slapped the lower door and left a handprint of clear brine on the paint. 5 long streaks. It began to drip upward, toward the window. I was already moving. I climbed back in, threw it in low, and buried the throttle. The truck lurched and the chain rattled. The ribbon lifted from the door and ran ahead of me down the center line, leading like a pilot car. The CB popped once. Turn around, my voice said. The mile marker ahead leaned in the headlights as the road crowned. The dark line curved 90 degrees without braking and circled the truck once, slow and tight, before flattening again and racing off under the blade. The controller flashed fault, auger jammed, spinner jammed, both dry as a bone. I drove straight to the shed. The garage light sat warm and yellow over wet concrete. My foreman met me with his clipboard and a coffee. He asked why I killed the root early. I pointed to the door. The handprint was still there in a delicate bloom of clear crystals. 5 streaks arcing toward the glass. No splash marks, no drip trail, just that shape like someone had pressed from the inside of the metal. He said road spray can do odd things. He ran his thumb over it. The crystals rewrote themselves where he touched. Lines were forming in the same shape a few inches higher. We parked the truck inside and let the heat run. By morning, the door looked normal except for 5 faint, clean tracks where no salt stuck, as if the paint had forgotten how to hold frost in those lines. Out on Route 29, the day crew said the lane stayed damp under clear sun from 149 to 156. The bridge decks were bone dry, only that run kept a dull shine. Even after 2 more trucks passed with sand. I still take winter shifts. I still tell rookies the same speech about pace and patience, but I do not linger on that stretch after midnight. If the mirror goes dark under a clear sky, I don't test the spinner. I don't key the radio to hear myself talk back. I put the blade down just enough to sing, and I drive until the garage lights turn the snow orange. Some nights, when I park and kill the beacons, I watch the wet outline of the truck form on the floor. It spreads slow against the slope, then curls back toward my boots, like the road has learned my weight and wants to walk me home. I work maintenance for the county water department based out of Socorro, New Mexico. Most of my work involves checking old wells and pumps scattered across ranchland that hasn't seen regular use in decades. It's quiet work that suits me fine. I like the open land and the kind of silence that only exists miles from another person. On April 15th, 2021, I was dispatched to a decommissioned livestock well on leased property north of the Rio Salado Basin. The owner had called the county office claiming the old draw line had jammed. He said something down there was keeping tension on it, that the rope never stayed slack. I'd heard plenty of stories like that from ranchers. I figured it was water swelling the hemp, or an air pocket shifting below the surface. The property lay at the end of an unmarked track, 2 miles off a dirt road, already half erased by sand. It took nearly an hour to drive those last 2 miles in low gear. The desert was the color of bone, and the heat shimmered off the ground until the horizon looked liquid. The well sat beside an abandoned windmill tower that leaned at an angle, its blades half missing and the tail vane rusted stiff. The only sound came from insects and the soft metallic creak of the tower when the wind moved. The well cap had been removed, exposing a round shaft lined with concrete, a weathered rope, brown and stiff, hung over a cleat, and disappeared into the darkness below. I logged the coordinates, checked for cracks in the casing, and started the standard inspection. The first step is always to verify depth and condition. I dropped a weighted gauge line and watched the numbers roll off the reel. The water level sat deeper than expected, about 32 feet down. I leaned over the edge with a flashlight. The beam caught the glint of water far below. The surface was smooth and still, too clear for a well that old. The rope extended straight into it. No sag, no slack. I gave it a tug. The fibers held tight, as if something beneath was gripping the line. I let go, expecting it to settle. It didn't move. Eat stashed, tout humming, faintly. Against the cleat, the air inside the shaft was cooler, almost damp, and carried a faint metallic scent. I thought it might be oxidized casing or rusted pump parts. Nothing unusual. When I stood up, the wind dropped suddenly. The silence that followed was heavy, as though the landscape had stopped breathing. I heard a soft scraping sound echo up from below, rope sliding against stone. Then the tension shifted under my fingers. The rope twitched, then rose an inch. 10-0 there, the fibers sliding over the rim slow and smooth. It wasn't the wind, and it wasn't pressure from water. Something was pulling it upward from underneath. I stepped back, keeping the flashlight trained on the rope. It climbed another foot before pausing, hanging there like it was waiting for direction. I radioed my supervisor, told him I had movement on a line from a sealed well. He sounded half asleep. He said it was probably a shifting weight or a thermal expansion. I told him it was rising. He told me to cut it loose if I felt unsafe. His voice crackled in the static. When I looked back at the well, the rope was still again, as if it had been listening. I could see every fiber outlined in the flashlight beam, glistening faintly as though it was wet. I tied off the top of the line to the cleat again and pulled a little more to test it. The tension was strong, heavy, unrelenting. When I released it, the rope didn't fall. It stayed suspended. I took my knife and cut through the top section near the knot. The loose piece should have fallen straight into the shaft. Instead, it stopped halfway down, hovering in open air. It hung there for a long breath before sliding back over the edge and vanishing into the dark. I heard it hit the water, a deep, hollow splash that echoed too long to make sense. The air pressure shifted, my flashlight dimmed to a pulse, like it was losing battery. I leaned closer, expecting to see the rope sink. Instead, the surface rippled and then stilled again. The cut end of the rope floated upright, the way a fishing line does when something below is pulling from a distance. Then it dipped and disappeared beneath the surface. I could hear faint bubbles rising, rhythmic, almost like breathing. I stepped back, and something brushed my boot. The coil of rope I had left behind me was moving, inching toward the well. Each loop straightened one at a time, dragging through the dust as if someone beneath the earth was reeling it in. I kicked the coil aside, but the end kept sliding, scraping against the ground with a sound too soft to be roped. It was slick, almost wet, like skin against concrete. I watched the tail end lift over the rim, feeding itself back into the shaft, smooth and patient. Then the water below gave one deep, heavy splash that sent droplets up the walls. The air smelled sharp, metallic, and sweet, like blood and rust. Primera basket, white flashlight trembling in my hand, and didn't stop until I reached the truck. The radio crackled again as I started the engine. At first, it was just static. Then my own voice came through, replaying the call from earlier. Movement on the line, it said, clear and flat. Then again, slower. Movement on the line. Then the signal broke into a low hum that sounded too much like breathing. I turned the unit off and drove until I saw highway lights. 2 days later, the landowner called the office. He wanted to know why we hadn't sealed the well. He said the rope was back, clean and new, tied around the cleat just like before. I told him that was impossible, that I had cut it. He said maybe the wind had done it. Tug didn't he sound convinced. I offered to send another crew, but the dispatches said the job file had been closed with no record of my report. The paperwork was gone. I kept a section of that rope, the short piece I had cut off. I left it in the truck's toolbox as evidence. A week later, I checked it again. The fibers had darkened, damp at the ends, though it hadn't rained. The smell was the same as the air inside the well, metallic and old. I threw it out behind the maintenance yard. The next morning, there was a thin line of dust running from where it had landed, straight to the corner of the fence, like something had dragged it away during the night. I didn't go back to that site. The county sealed the access road that summer after a sinkhole opened near the basin. The reports said the collapse had exposed a series of narrow shafts that no one could trace. The landowner sold the property. I heard he moved east and never came back. Sometimes, on night patrols, I pass near that region. The land is empty now. Just low scrub and wind. But once, when I stopped for a flat tire, I heard a faint creak behind me. When primera turned, the air smelled like rain on metal, and something pale swayed low across the dirt, slow and patient, as if still climbing. I work as a wildlife biologist for the Bureau of Land Management in Utah. Most of my job is spent recovering data from motion-triggered trail cameras scattered across the northern Uinta Basin. They track predators, migration, and range health. The cameras are cheap, durable, and tireless. They never blink. Anciennement, someone has to retrieve the cards, label the captures, and file the data. That someone is usually me. In August of 2022, I was assigned to recover 8 cameras near Dry Hollow Wash, close to the oil leases that were abandoned after a fire a few years back. The area is remote and fenced off from public access. My work took me along a dry corridor that used to be a stream. It is quiet country, just rock and sage, and the faint smell of oil that never seems to leave the soil. I have always liked working alone. The desert keeps its own kind of order. I swapped cards at each site, checked batteries, and marked coordinates. Nothing unusual. At night I camped near an arroyo where the sand was pale and smooth, like bone. Coyotes called once after sunset, and went silent. When I reviewed the first set of images back at the office, everything looked routine. Deer, rabbits, one mountain lion at a distance. Then I reached the file marked camera for frame 1102. The timestamp read 2:41 a.m. Man stood at the far edge of the clearing, turned slightly toward the trees. His clothes were clean. His outline was sharp, as if he had been standing still for a very long time. The next frame was empty. 2 cameras later, I saw him again. Same jacket, same posture, same timestamp. This time, he was closer to the lens. You could make out the fabric of the coat, stiff and waxed. The location was 3 miles from the first camera. It was impossible for a person to appear at both places at the same moment. I marked the images as anomalies and sent them to my supervisor, a man named Haskins, who had worked this region for decades. He called me the next morning. His voice was tired. "Delete them," he said. "Why?" "Because some things out there don't want a record." Then, a hung up. I went back the following week to replace the cameras. The air felt heavier than before. The smell was different, like rain on metal. I found claw marks on one of the trees, too high for a coyote. The bark was gouged deep. There were no prints in the dust. I kept working. That night, the wind carried a smell like blood that had been left too long in the heat. Coyotes started up around midnight, but the sound changed halfway through. It wasn't barking anymore. It was screaming. The next morning, I found tracks beside my camp. They were long, narrow, and pressed deepest at the toes, as if whoever made them had leaned forward when they walked. I followed them until they disappeared into the wash. When I returned to the office, I loaded the new files. Every camera had triggered at 2:41 a.m. The man appeared again, standing in front of each lens. In the last image, his head was tilted toward the camera. The mouth was open slightly, as if forming a word. His eyes reflected no light. The next image showed the same figure farther away, walking into the trees, knees bending sideways like a spider's. I brought the files to Haskins in person. He shut the monitor off after the first photo. "That is Ute land," he said quietly. "Our permits include that section," I told him. He shook his head. "Not that land. The old land. It remembers what used to walk there." He told me about walkers, the kind that wear the faces of things they take. He said if I ever heard my own voice in the dark, I should not answer. Then he told me to take leave and not come back. I lasted 2 nights before curiosity pulled me out again. The desert has a way of making you doubt your own memories. I needed to see for myself. I reached the first site near dusk. The light was the color of copper. I changed the SD card, checked the mount, and started toward the second camera. The post was broken in half. The camera was missing. The dirt around it had been disturbed, patterned with wide circles, as if something had moved around the spot again and again. My flashlight beam caught the missing camera hanging from a juniper branch, tied neatly with its own strap. The lens was cracked and pointed at the ground. I turned toward the truck and froze. Footsteps followed mine in the sand, always 2 behind, perfectly spaced. When I stopped, they stopped. I called out, "Park service." "Who's there?" The radio on my shoulder hissed once. Then a voice spoke. It was my own voice. "Don't look." I looked anyway. 30 feet away, a man stood in the half-light. He had my jacket, my boots, my stance. His arms hung too long, fingers almost to his knees. The face was mine, but stretched thin, the eyes flat and wrong. It moved its head the way a curious animal studies a sound. Then it smiled, showing teeth that didn't match the shape of the mouth. A sound came out, a broken clicking that echoed across the wash. I ran. I remember the truck door slamming and the headlights catching movement behind me. The figure didn't run. It folded, like mist collapsing, and was gone. The radio kept whispering even after I turned it off. The voice repeated the same words over and over. Still watching, still closer. The road out seemed longer than it should have been. When I hit the highway, the static stopped. I left everything at the office and never returned. A month later, Haskins quit too. They said he moved north and stopped answering calls. I took work in Montana tracking fish populations. Different climate, different ghosts. But sometimes, when I review the underwater cameras, a folder appears that I didn't create. It is always labeled to _41. Inside is one image. A riverbank, under moonlight. A figure stands on the far shore wearing my clothes, my face, and waiting for me to blink. I work for the Department of Transportation out of Las Cruces, New Mexico. My division handles dormant road systems. The ones that were started, half-funded, then abandoned when the budget shifted. Most of my coworkers hate these assignments because they're long stretches of nothing. I like them. No traffic, no schedules, no noise, just quiet roads and a checklist. On July 10th, 2022, I was assigned to verify coordinates for an unfinished section of old Route 213, 15 miles north of the White Sands Missile Range. The job sounded easy enough. Drive the stretch, place the cones, confirm the mile markers, and log them into the archive. The file said the road hadn't been touched in almost 20 years. Local crews warned me that the sand swallowed equipment out there. Primera told them, ED bring extra cones. The road started as pavement and ended as something pretending to be it. Long cracks split the surface into jagged plates that shifted when the wind hit them. The air shimmered in waves that blurred the horizon into a pale mirage. The only landmark was a rusted mile marker half buried in the shoulder. I parked the truck, pulled out the survey kit, and began setting fluorescent cones at every half-mile point. The procedure was simple. Each cone was tagged with reflective tape, measured, photographed, and logged by coordinate. My GPS unit pulsed a steady green while I walked. I didn't see another vehicle the entire day. By late afternoon, the light had turned hard and gold. The road looked like it ran forever. I placed the last cone at mile 117, stepped back to check alignment, and turned toward the truck. Something about the spacing looked wrong. The last cone was a few feet off the line, too far to the right. I frowned and walked back to move it. Day wind wasn't strong enough to push it, and I had wedged the base with gravel. I reset it, took another photo, and returned to the truck. When I looked up again, a different cone had shifted. It leaned just enough to catch the sunlight differently. I told myself it was the heat, the wind, or my own exhaustion. It was an easy lie to believe after 12 hours in the sun. I slept in the truck that night because it was too far to drive back. The temperature dropped fast after dark. The desert turns quiet in a way that makes your ears ring. I listened to the ticking of the engine, the faint rattle of metal cooling, and the wind brushing sand along the pavement. Around 2 in the morning, I heard a single hollow knock, then another, farther away. I sat up and looked out the windshield. The cones were still standing, faint orange under the moonlight. I told myself it was just one, falling over. Then I heard it again, closer, deliberate. I climbed out, flashlight in hand, and walked 50 feet down the line. Every cone stood perfectly upright. The sound stopped the moment I looked at them. The next morning, I reviewed my data. Every coordinate was off by the same distance. Half a meter east. Each displacement was identical, as if the whole pattern had slid sideways overnight. The sand around the cones looked smooth. No tracks, no signs of wind scouring. I remeasured each point, adjusted them back into position, and logged the correction. The numbers matched for a few hours, until they didn't. By early afternoon, when I cross-checked the first 3 markers again, all of them had shifted in the opposite direction. It was exact, like something testing precision. I took a break, sat on the truck's tailgate, and looked down the long line of cones. They glowed faintly in the heat shimmer, perfectly spaced. Then one tilted forward, slow and deliberate, before falling flat on the road. I walked out, reset it, turned to leave, and saw another one down. I picked that up too. By the time I reached the third, the first had fallen again. Each movement came when I wasn't looking, as if the act of watching held them still. I stayed there longer than I should have, trying to catch the moment of motion. I never did. That evening, the wind died completely. The air felt heavy and dry, like standing near an oven door. My GPS froze, its timestamp locked at 1903. I lifted my head from the screen and saw the cones behind me, forming a perfect curve instead of a straight line. I checked the map overlay. The curve didn't match the road's geometry. It matched something underneath it, a pattern in the old satellite data that looked like a buried trench. Then one of the cones slid 2 inches sideways, without a sound. The next followed. They weren't falling anymore. They were being moved. I felt the air change. It pressed in close, thick and metallic. The smell reminded me of ozone and rust, the sharp taste of old machinery. My radio hissed with static. Then a voice came through, my own. "Marker placed," it said. The same tone, same rhythm, same breath I had used earlier when logging notes. Then it repeated the phrase, slightly distorted. "Marker placed," the third time. The words stretched like rubber, each syllable thinning into the noise. I turned the radio off, but the static didn't stop. It seemed to come from the air itself. By the time I reached the truck, the horizon was dim. The light from the cones reflected off the windshield as I backed up, each one standing in perfect formation again. They looked almost like eyes, glowing faint orange in the dusk. The temperature had dropped 10 degrees. I started the engine and drove toward the junction. The GPS came alive once I hit the highway. The display showed my location as 10 miles south of the last coordinate. Though I hadn't traveled that far, I kept driving until the road joined the main route. 2 days later, my supervisor called. He asked about the data file I submitted. He said the coordinates were nonsense, plotted in a pattern that didn't match any road grid. He wanted to know if I had entered them manually. I told him they came straight from the device. He paused for a long time, then said the archive listed Route 213 as fully decommissioned since 2003. The file I was given shouldn't he have existed. I checked the folder on my tablet. The document was gone, replaced with a blank entry labeled "No Active Project." Sometimes, when I drive at night, I still see flashes of orange on the shoulder of the highway. They catch the headlights for a split second, lined up too neatly to be random. They always appear at even intervals, perfectly spaced, marking something that isn't supposed to be there. I've learned not to slow down. I just keep my eyes on the center line and make sure I never blink. I took the job house-sitting for a retired couple who spent winters in Mexico. They owned a ranch-style home 30 miles south of Alimogordo, out past the last gas station and down a dirt road that didn't have a name. They said the house needed a presence while they were gone. Someone to feed the dog and keep the pipes from freezing. I told them I worked remote maintenance for a security company, so staying up late wasn't a problem. They left me the keys, the codes, and a list of small chores written in neat handwriting. When they drove off, the silence that followed settled over the property like dust. The house sat low against the sand, built from concrete and pale stucco. Beyond the fence, the desert stretched until it faded into heat shimmer. Inside, everything smelled like cedar and furniture polish. The power flickered every now and then, the way it does when you are too far from a substation. At night, the lights from Holloman Air Force Base painted the sky faint orange. The only sound was the wind brushing dry grass against the foundation. It was peaceful in the way places become when they are too far from other people. On the second night, I noticed the doorbell. It rang once, sharp and clean, at exactly 2:47 a.m. I checked my watch because the sound was so precise it felt scheduled. I went to the door and opened it. There was nothing there. The dog, an old shepherd mix named Jasper, stood behind me with his ears flattened and his tail tucked tight. I checked the yard, the road, the fence line. The desert was empty, silver in the moonlight. I waited for a second ring, but it never came. The next night, it happened again. Same time, same tone. One short ring. I stepped outside faster, this time, half expecting to catch some teenager trying to be clever. The wind had stopped completely. The air was heavy and still. I walked the perimeter of the house with my flashlight, checking for footprints. The sand was smooth, except for my own. Jasper wouldn't leave the doorway. He just stared at the open space beyond the fence, as if something was standing there where I couldn't see it. By the fourth night, I had started keeping the time open on my phone beside the bed. I told myself I was just being thorough, documenting a possible electrical fault. The couple had mentioned the doorbell was an old wired system, not wireless. It might have been a short, a power surge, something mechanical. But when the chime came again at 2:47, it sounded too deliberate. Detonedid. Detonediden. Bazor crackle. It was clear as if someone had pressed the button slowly and with intention. The air inside the house seemed to vibrate for a second afterward, like the walls remembered the sound. I tested the wiring the next morning. The system was simple. A transformer, a chime unit, and a button plate beside the front door. The screws were tight. No corrosion, no moisture. I pressed it a few times myself. The sound matched exactly. It was real, not imagined. I even disconnected the power briefly to test resistance. The circuit was dead, just as it should be. I left it unplugged that afternoon while I worked, but that night, at 2:47, the bell rang again. The power cord was still hanging loose from the transformer. Jasper barked once, then stopped mid-sound. He walked backward until he was under the kitchen table and lay down flat. I grabbed the flashlight and checked the front entry. The porch light flickered when I opened the door. The desert was still. A low wind moved through the mesquite bushes, brushing them in one direction, then the other. Far out in the dark, something shifted. It looked like a person at first, but the outline didn't move like one. It leaned too far forward, like gravity worked differently where it stood. Then the motion stopped completely. The sound of the bells seemed to linger in my ears long after it had stopped. I locked the door and sat awake until dawn. Every clock in the house ticked louder than I remembered. The air vents groaned each time the heater cycled on. I began to mark the nights on a notepad. Every entry said the same thing. 2:47 a.m. Single ring. Sometimes I heard the sound twice in my head before it actually happened, as if the house itself was preparing for it. The repetition became the rhythm of the place, something ancient and precise, like tide or heartbeat. On the 8th night, I moved Jasper's bed into my room. The dog wouldn't leave my side anymore. I set up a small camera near the door, the kind we use for motion tests and security inspections. I aimed it at the front entry and let it run while I sat awake. At exactly 2:47, the doorbell chimed again. I walked to the door slowly, watching the live feed on my phone. The motion sensor flashed once. Something had passed in front of the lens, but the image was distorted, blurred into light instead of form. I opened the door anyway. The sand outside looked untouched. Then I noticed a single handprint on the glass storm door, pressed flat and perfectly centered. It was clean. No dirt, no sweat, no oil. The following morning I reviewed the footage. The timestamp showed the moment the chime sounded, but the image before it was strange. For one frame, just before the motion trigger, the entire doorway was black, as if something had blocked out the porch light completely. Then the light returned, and the bell rang. I saved the file and tried to send it to the homeowners, but the email failed to upload. The signal out there was always weak, but that night it was completely gone. On my final night in the house, I sat in the living room with the lights off. I decided to let the moment happen. When the clock hit 2:47, the bell rang once, clear and steady. The sound didn't echo through the house this time. It stayed near the door, contained, as if whoever pressed it was standing closer than before. Jasper winced softly and pressed his head against my leg. The porch light dimmed, flickered once, and held steady again. I didn't open the door. I didn't move at all. I just listened. I turned the keys back over the next morning and didn't mention the bell. The couple thanked me and said the house had been quiet when they left. They laughed when I told them the dog had been restless. Before I drove off, I looked once more at the porch from the road. The sun had just come up, and the desert was pale and empty. Then, faintly, through the open truck window, I heard the sound. One short ring, sharp, clean, and perfectly timed. The forest floor was still cloaked in the pre-dawn mist, a heavy, damp blanket that clung to everything. My brother, Sam, and I had been out since what felt like the middle of the night, our headlamps cutting weak circles into the oppressive darkness. We were searching for morels, those elusive, brain-like fungi that fetch a small fortune at the farmer's market. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a smell I usually found comforting. But this morning, it felt different. It felt heavy, watchful. Sam was a few yards ahead of me, his light bobbing as he scanned the base of a massive oak. "Anything yet, Leo?" Hiccupped out, his voice muffled by the fog. "Just a lot of false ones," I replied, nudging a suspicious-looking clump with the toe of my boot. "I'm starting to think we came out too early." "Patience, little brother," he chuckled. "The early bird gets the worm, or in our case, the morel." I rolled my eyes, even though he couldn't see me. Sam was always the optimist, the one who saw adventure where I saw potential disaster. We'd been foraging in these woods since we were kids, taught by our grandfather who had a healthy respect, bordering on fear, for the old ways and the stories that came with them. He'd tell us tales of things that walked in the woods, things that weren't quite animal and not quite human. He called them skinwalkers. He warned us never to whistle in the dark, never to answer a voice we didn't recognize, and most importantly, never to speak their name aloud in the forest. To us, they were just spooky stories to tell around a campfire. We were older now, more rationalo. So I thought. That's when I heard it. A faint whisper, like wind rustling through dry leaves. But it had a distinct, melodic quality. It sounded like a name carried on the breeze. It was close. Too close. I froze, straining my ears. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my own voice barely a whisper. Sam straightened up, turning his headlamp towards me. The bright light blinded me for a second. "Hear what? You're getting jumpy, Leo. It's just the wind." But it wasn't the wind. The sound came again, clearer this time. A soft, feminine voice, singing a wordless tune. It was beautiful, hauntingly so, and it seemed to be coming from just beyond a dense thicket of blackberry bushes to my left. Every instinct screamed at me to stay put, to call out to Sam and get the hell out of there. But a strange, powerful curiosity took hold. It was like being in a trance. I felt an irresistible pull towards the sound. I need to see who was singing. "Sam, stay here," I said, my voice feeling disconnected from my body. "I'm just going to check this out." "Leo, wait. Don't be an idiot." Sam's voice was sharp with alarm, but it sounded distant, like it was coming from the other side of a long tunnel. I was already pushing through the thorny branches, ignoring the sharp pricks that tore at my jacket and skin. The singing grew louder as I moved deeper into the thicket. It was mesmerizing, wrapping around me and pulling me forward. The world seemed to narrow until there was only me, the thorns, and that enchanting voice. I finally broke through the bushes into a small, unnaturally perfect clearing. The mist was thinner here, and in the center stood a deer. It was a doe, a coat the color of rich chocolate, and she was staring right at me. Her eyes were a wrong. They were too large, too dark, and they held an intelligence that was utterly unsettling. They weren't the soft, gentle eyes of a deer. They were ancient and knowing, and the singing was coming from her. The sound wasn't coming from her mouth, which was closed, but seemed to emanate from her entire being, vibrating in the air around her. My blood ran cold. Grandfather's stories crashed back into my mind with the force of a tidal wave. They can take any shape they want, he'd said. Asterisk, an owl, a coyote, even a deer. They lure you in with a voice you trust, or a sight you can't resist. Asterisk panic seized me, and the trance shattered. I scrambled backward, tripping over a root and falling hard. My headlamp flew off, its beams skittering across the clearing before extinguishing against a tree trunk, plunging me into near total darkness. The singing stopped. The silence that followed was 1,000 times more terrifying. "Sam!" I screamed, my voice cracking. "Sam!" I heard a frantic rustling from the direction I'd come. "Leo, where are you?" "Talk to me!" "It's here. The thing from the stories. It's real," I yelled, crawling blindly back towards his voice. Thorns ripped at my face and hands, but I didn't feel the pain. Then, from the clearing behind me, I heard a new sound, a sickening crack, like large bones snapping and rearranging. It was followed by a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the ground. This was no deer. This was a predator. I finally burst back through the thicket and practically collided with Sam. He grabbed my arms, his face a mask of terror in the beam of his headlamp. "What did you see? What was it?" I couldn't form words. I just pointed back towards the clearing, my whole body shaking uncontrollably. But the sound wasn't coming from the clearing anymore. It was moving, circling us, a dry, scraping sound, like claws on rock, accompanied by that same deep growl. We were being hunted. "We have to go. Now," Sam yelled, pulling me along. We ran. We crashed through the undergrowth, heedless of the branches whipping our faces. The sky was beginning to lighten, turning from inky black to a bruised purple, but it offered no comfort. The forest felt alien, a labyrinth designed to trap us. The sounds of our pursuer were always just behind us, sometimes to the left, sometimes to the right. It was toying with us, hurting us. Suddenly, a voice cut through the woods, clear as a bell. "Help me!" We both skidded to a halt. It was my voice, exactly my voice, but filled with a terror and desperation I didn't feel in that moment. It was coming from a stand of tall pines about 50 yards away. Sam looked at me, his eyes wide with confusion. "Leo, but you're right here." "It's not me," I gasped, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Don't listen. Grandfather said it can mimic you. It's a trap. Help. It's got me, Sam. Please." My own voice pleaded from the trees. It was a perfect imitation, down to the slight waver I get when I'm scared. It was a chilling, surreal experience. Hearing your own voice beg for help when you're standing right there. Sam was frozen, his face a battle of logic and instinct. The instinct to save his brother was a powerful one, but it sounds just like you. What if you're wrong? What if something else happened and... It's a lie, Sam. Look at me. I grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to meet my eyes. It's me. I'm right here. We have to keep moving. The voice cried out again, this time ending in a choked-off scream that was abruptly cut short. The sound was so convincing, so visceral, that for a split second, Even I doubted myself. Sam let out a pained cry, his resolve crumbling, and that's when it made its move. From the direction of the mimicked voice, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was tall and emaciated, moving on two legs, but in a jerky, unnatural way. Its limbs were too long, its joints bending at impossible angles. Its skin was pale and stretched taut over a skeletal frame, like dried parchment. And its face. It at no face. It was a smooth, blank expanse of skin, except for a pair of hollow, black sockets where eyes should have been. We didn't scream. The sound was trapped in our throats, choked by pure, undiluted terror. We just turned and ran, blind with panic. We ran until our lungs burned and our legs felt like lead. The forest seemed to stretch on forever, every tree looking the same as the last. Then, I stumbled, my ankle twisting with a sickening pop. I went down hard, a cry of agony escaping my lips. Sam spun around, his face pale. The scraping, clicking sounds of our pursuer were getting closer. I can't, I sobbed, clutching my ankle. You have to go. Sam. Ren. I'm not leaving you, he yelled, trying to hoe me to my feet. But my weight was dead on my throbbing ankle. It was useless. The thing was almost upon us. It was so close I could smell it, a coppery, metallic scent mixed with the odor of damp soil and decay. This was it. This was how we ended. And then I felt a strange calm wash over me. I looked at Sam, at the terror in his eyes, and a different voice came out of my mouth. It wasn't mine. It was deep, raspy, and ancient. It spoke a single word, a word I didn't know but understood completely. The creature stopped. It tilted its featureless head, its hollow sockets, seeming to stare right through me. Leo? What did you just say? Sam whispered, his eyes flicking between me and the creature. I didn't know. The word had come from me, but it wasn't my own. It felt like something had spoken through me. It felt like my own throat had been hijacked. The creature took one hesitant step back, then another. It let out a low hiss, a sound of frustration and perhaps fear. Then, with a speed that defied its gangly form, it turned and melted back into the shadows of the forest. We stayed there for what felt like an eternity, trembling in the growing light of dawn, listening. The only sounds were our own ragged breaths and the normal, waking chirps of morning birds. The oppressive, watchful feeling was gone. Sam eventually helped me up, and using him as a crutch, we limped our way out of the woods. Neither of us spoke. What was there to say? We had walked into a children's ghost story and barely walked out. I never found out what word I spoke, or where it came from. Sometimes, late at night, I can still feel the echo of it in my throat, a foreign vibration that doesn't belong to me. My grandfather passed away years ago, so I can't ask him, but I think I know. I think in that moment of absolute terror, some old, forgotten piece of him, some ancient knowledge he carried, spoke through me to save us. We never went back to those woods. We sold our foraging gear and I took a desk job in the city. Sam moved 2 states away. We don't talk about that morning, but I see it in his eyes every time we meet. We know what's out there, in the quiet, misty places of the world. And we know that some stories aren't just stories. Be careful in the woods at first light. You never know who or what might be listening, and you never know whose voice might answer back from your own throat. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there. I work nights as a security contractor for a petroleum company that manages wells and compressor stations across western Oklahoma. It isn't glamorous work, but it pays steady. My post sits on a decommissioned section of the Caldwell Basin field, about 20 miles from the nearest town. The place used to run 24 hours a day until a pressure drop shut it down 3 years ago. Now it's just me, a few automated lights, and the slow heartbeat of the pumps that still cycle for maintenance. They say the equipment hums because of residual gas pressure. It sounds more like breathing when you're out there long enough. My shift starts at 6 in the evening and runs until 6 in the morning. The company likes live patrols instead of just cameras, so I drive a circuit around the outer gates every 2 hours. Check the locks, note any leaks or trespass signs. It's quiet work, just the sound of gravel under the tires and the low hum of generators. I keep the radio tuned to dispatch, but there's rarely traffic after midnight. Sometimes truckers on nearby channels bleed through, static and laughter and old country songs. Sometimes not even that. Nights like that make the world feel thin. The first time it happened was on a Tuesday in late September. The air was heavy, the kind that smells like metal and lightning before a storm that never comes. I had just finished my 3rd circuit, parked by pump station 4, and keyed the radio to report clear. Unit 3, I said. No movement on the east line. Light stable, gate secure. The usual reply should have been a double click from dispatch. Instead, I heard a voice. Mine. Gate secure, it said back. Same tone, same rhythm. Then static. I thought I'd hit the transmit twice and replayed my own voice from feedback. I checked, the mic solid red light. No short. I turned the volume down and told myself it was interference from the old repeater tower, but the voice bothered me. It didn't sound delayed. It had answered me too soon, overlapping my own last word by half a second, like it already knew what I was about to say. The next night, the pattern repeated. Different section, same setup. I keyed the mic to call in. Unit 3, northern perimeter clear. The reply came instantly. Same words, same voice, same faint breath between them. Northern perimeter clear. I shut the radio off and sat in the cab listening to the wind drag dust across the hood. Then I turned it back on and said nothing. A few seconds later, the radio clicked on its own and my voice came through again. But this time, it spoke words I hadn't said yet. Next station is empty, it whispered. The words stretched thin, distorted by static. I stared at the dark road ahead. There was no movement, no light beyond the flood lamps. Only that faint vibration that seemed to come from the ground itself. I drove the next leg faster than usual. The field stretched flat under the moon, dotted with pump jacks that rose and fell like slow machines breathing in rhythm. Their counterweights turned with the sound of metal exhaling. Every shadow looked like it was waiting. When I reached Station 5, I stepped out to check the gate. The lock was fine. The air smelled like oil and rain that would never fall. I wrote my notes and keyed the radio again, almost out of habit. Unit 3 at 5, I said. Before I could finish, the radio answered. You shouldn't be there. It was my voice. Quiet and certain. I froze. The sound of the pump motor deepened. It had always cycled steady, but now the rhythm faltered, each rise and fall slower than the last. The floodlight flickered. I walked back to the truck with the radio still in my hand. Who is this? I said. Stada? Then the channel opened again, faint and soft. You know who this is? The voice said. You left the door open. I turned toward the control shed behind the pump. The door was swinging slightly in the wind. I was certain I had locked it. The padlock hung from the latch, unhooked. Inside, the air was thick with heat. The control monitors were dark, but the small analog meters along the wall flicked at random, needles jerking as if under pressure. The radio on my belt crackled again, this time without me touching it. Close it, the voice said. Close it before it comes in. I looked around the shed. There was no one. The only sound was the slow ticking of cooling metal. I stepped outside, pulled the door shut, and locked Italiano. The floodlight went out. Darkness in the oil field is different from anywhere else at ISNT. Just the absence of light at S. Like the ground absorbs everything that tries to escape it. The air buzzed with static, faint but constant. I climbed into the truck and started the engine. The headlights caught the pump jack in mid-cycle. Motionless now, one arm raised halfway like a hand frozen midwave. The radio clicked again. Still open, my voice said. Still open. I turned it off completely and drove. When I reached the main yard, the dispatch trailer was dark. I checked the time, 3:04 a.m., and keyed my backup handheld to contact central control. The signal went through, but the voice on the other end wasn't the dispatcher. "You're behind schedule," it said, calm, even. It was me again. I dropped the mic, grabbed the handheld from the mount, and stepped outside. The field was silent. No wind, no hum from the generators, nothing. I walked a short distance from the truck, watching the sky. Then the pump motors all started at once. Every single one in the field, cycling in perfect unison. The air vibrated like a heartbeat under my boots. I called Centra from my cell. The real dispatcher picked up on the second ring. Her voice was groggy, but real. I asked if she'd been transmitting to me on the field frequency. She said no one had used the radio all night. I told her there was interference. She said the repeater tower was offline for maintenance. No signal in my sector. My phone buzzed then, low battery warning, and when I looked up, the floodlights along the main fence came on, one by one, moving in a line toward me. They weren't motion activated. They were on manual timers. I turned to the truck. The driver's door was open. I climbed in fast and started the engine. The interior lights flickered as I grabbed the mic again. I didn't press the button this time. I just listened. After a long moment, the static cleared and the sound came through, faint, rhythmic, like slow breathing. Then my voice, soft and tired, said, "Don't look in the mirror." I couldn't help it. I looked. Anyway, for a second, the cab behind me wasn't empty. A shape sat in the rear seat, shoulders hunched, face turned toward the window. It looked exactly like me. Same uniform, same posture. It blinked once, then vanished when the headlights caught the reflection. I drove until sunrise without stopping. The pumps faded behind me, smaller and smaller, until they disappeared into the haze. The radio stayed silent. When I reached the company yard, the day shift guard waved me through. I asked if anyone had been trying to reach me overnight. He said no one had logged in from my post since midnight. I checked the timesheets myself later. The system showed my ID badge had clocked out at 12:07 a.m., almost 3 hours before I left the field. I quit that week. The company didn't argue. They said the Caldwell field would be fully decommissioned by winter. A month later, I drove past the site on my way to visit family in Kansas. The pumps were gone. The lights dismantled. The land already reclaiming itself. Still, as I passed the turnoff, my truck CB came alive even though the radio was off. The speaker hissed, then clicked once, like someone keying the mic. My voice came through, quiet, but clear. "Gate secure," it said. Then, almost as an afterthought, "Still open." I don't use radios anymore. At night though, when the wind picks up and the air smells like rain and iron, I can still hear a faint hum under the noise, like machinery far underground. If I listen too long, I start to hear a voice in the static. It always starts the same way, calm and steady, like it's just checking in. "Unit 3, it says, "You shouldn't be there." The forest floor has a way of swallowing sound, but some things refuse to be silenced. My name's Alex, and I'm a structural inspector. I spend my days hiking to remote bridges, checking for rot and rust. It's usually peaceful, just me and the quiet hum of the wilderness. But what happened last fall on the old Black Creek Trail bridge, that silence was a lie. It was late October, the kind of day where the air bites and the sun feels distant. The bridge was a rickety old thing, a wooden span over a deep, rocky gorge. As I approached, a strange feeling washed over me, like I was being watched. I shook it off. It's easy to get spooked when you're miles from anywhere. The forest plays tricks on your mind. I started my inspection, tapping the support beams with my hammer, listening for the telltale thud of compromised wood. That's when I heard it. A soft scraping sound from below the bridge. I leaned over the railing, peering into the shadows. Nothing. Probably just a branch caught in the wind. I went back to work, documenting cracks in the decking. Then, the scraping came again. Louder this time. It was rhythmic, deliberate. Scrape. 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 It sounded like something heavy being dragged across the rocks. My heart started to pound. "Hello," I called out, my voice sounding small and weak against the vastness of the gorge. The only reply was the echo of my own word. And then, a low growl. It wasn't a bear or a coyote. It was deeper, more guttural, filled with a kind of ancient malice that made the hair on my arm stand straight up. I froze, hammer in hand. The scraping stopped. Absolute silence descended again, but it was different now. It was heavy, charged with anticipation. I told myself to stay calm, to finish my inspection, and get out of there. But my eyes kept darting to the underside of the bridge. I could feel a presence. I decided to check the main support pylons at the far end of the bridge. I had to get a look underneath. As I knelt down, my flashlight beam cut through the gloom, and what I saw stopped my breath in my chest. Pressed into the thick, green moss covering the concrete foundation were handprints, but they weren't human. The fingers were too long, too thin, and bent at impossible angles, and where the knuckles should have been, there were deep, rounded impressions, as if someone had been walking on all fours, pressing their fists into the ground with immense force. Knuckle prints, my mind relayed. What kind of animal walks on its knuckles, besides an ape? We were in the middle of North America, thousands of miles from any jungle. I backed away slowly, my flashlight beam trembling. The growl echoed again, this time from directly behind me, on the trail I had just walked. It was close. Too close. I didn't think. I just ran. I sprinted back across the bridge, my boots thundering on the wooden planks. I didn't dare look back. I could hear it crashing through the underbrush behind me, keeping pace. It wasn't just running, it was hunting. The sounds were unnatural, the heavy footfalls of something then the swift, scuttling sound of something on all fours. It was changing, adapting. As I scrambled up the embankment on the other side, I risked a glance over my shoulder. In the fading light, I saw it emerge from the trees at the far end of the bridge. It was tall and gaunt, its limbs unnaturally long and jointed. Its skin looked like stretched, dry leather pulled tight over a skeletal frame. But the face, that's the part that haunts my nightmares. It was a horrifying amalgamation, part human, part canine, with eyes that glowed with a faint, predatory light. It tilted its head, and a sound like cracking bone echoed across the gorge. Then, it let out a scream. It wasn't the roar of an animal. It was a twisted, distorted version of a human voice. A shriek of pure, unadulterated hatred that seemed to tear at the very fabric of the air. It took a step onto the bridge, its long fingers, tipped with dirty, broken claws, gripping the handrail. That was enough for me. I turned and fled, not stopping until my lungs burned and my legs felt like lead. I didn't slow down until I saw the familiar glint of my truck through the trees. I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaken so badly I could barely get the door open. I threw myself inside, locked the doors, unspid Hawaii gravel spitting from my tires. I never filed the full inspection report for the Black Creek Trail Bridge. I just marked it as inaccessible due to hazardous conditions. It wasn't a lie. I've requested a transfer to a more urban district. I can't go back there. I can't get the image out of my head of those long, twisted fingers, of those glowing eyes, and of those knuckle prints pressed deep into the moss. Some things are meant to be left alone, buried in the dark places of the world. And sometimes, when you're inspecting the foundations of a bridge, you find out you're not the only one inspecting things. You're being inspected right back, and you're being judged as prey. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this journey into the shadows, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel for more tales from the edge of the unknown. Stay safe out there, and never, ever ignore that feeling of being watched.